Good evening, everyone. We'll start our meeting here at 6 o'clock. I'm Lawrence Real, the mayor of the Village of Los Ranchos, and I'm calling the Tuesday, July 21st, 2026 meeting to order. The time is approximately 6 o'clock. This meeting is streamed on the Village website. The public can also participate via Zoom. Instructions and overall public participation guidelines are listed on the website and on page 5 of the meeting packet. Madam Clerk, would you please continue the directions?
Thank you, Mayor. The Village of Los Ranchos is providing the ability for the public to participate in hybrid meetings. As with any application, digital service, or software, the opportunity for failure can occur. Therefore, the Village is not responsible for the inability to connect either by Zoom or viewing via live stream. The meeting is being recorded and will be available online after the meeting on the Village website.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Baldwin.
Here.
Trustee Edward.
Here.
Trustee Kiefer.
Here.
Trustee Rydell.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We will now go to order of business of general public comment. Only those participants who signed up prior to the meeting can speak on topics that do not appear on the agenda under public comment, and you will be given 3 minutes. To be fair to others waiting to speak, a timekeeper will make an announcement when the allotted time is up. Therefore, it is important to keep your comments short and plan on making your points as quickly as possible. No action can occur on these items. If you have questions, please feel free to contact staff during business hours. Madam Clerk, please proceed by calling up the individuals that have signed up for general public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we begin general comment, please note that comments on any active planning or zoning applications or applications still within the appeal period are not permitted. These items are or may become quasi-judicial and can only be discussed through the formal hearing process to ensure fairness and due process. The Director of Planning and Zoning may interrupt public comment to advise the speaker if their remarks fall within a quasi-judicial case. With that being said, we're going to call up our first individual, Mr. Jim Ellis. If you would, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Ellis. I live at 7618 Rio Grande Boulevard Northwest. Down our road, there was a fire hydrant, and the fire hydrant seemed broken. There was a piece of fire hydrant lying on the ground, and I walked by it and I said, gee, that fire hydrant's broken. I was talking to one of the neighbors and they said, yes, it's been broken for a year. So I called in and made a report of the broken fire hydrant, and then a few weeks later went by and it still hadn't been fixed, so I called again, and then finally spoke to somebody at the water department who came out and fixed it, and I think they fixed it the same day. My concern is not that the fire hydrant was broken, because that can happen, obviously, but my concern, and also not that there was that much of a delay in fixing the fire hydrant, about 3 weeks, but that the fire hydrant had been broken, I learned, for about a year, and that I thought fire hydrants should be checked and pressure chested and hooked up to fire hoses and run, especially with as dry as it is. And along the ditches I walk, and there's piles of debris from trees and branches and twigs, and a huge fire hazard all along the ditches. And these are right up against wooden fences. I have some photographs on my phone, but I should have probably brought them earlier to put up on the screens. But anybody who walks along the ditches knows there's large piles of debris all up and down the ditches. If they catch fire, lightning strike, somebody throws a cigarette into them, and there's a fire, and that fire catches on the wooden fences, right, that line almost the ditches, and then they go to the houses, and then there's a heavy wind, which we've had lots of winds, we could have a horrible, horrible fire in the village. And if the fire hydrants don't work, then we've got even more problems. My wife lets me make one suggestion a day, and my suggestion is the fire department should go and hook up their hoses to the fire hydrants, charge them, make sure they all work and are all operative. If they do that, and that should be, I would say, with the high fire risk we have now, at least once a month, and if not, once every 2 months, but it should be a periodic check on all the fire hydrants to make sure they work. And I have some personal experience with this. I was a personal injury attorney for 43 years, now retired. And in the city of Aztec, they had a fire hydrant that didn't work, and a house burned down and hired me, and we sued the city of Aztec and got a very substantial settlement. So I think that there's a liability issue there. Fire hydrants should be checked. There should be some sort of a tag on the fire hydrants. And I remember several years ago, I've lived here 30 years.
The speaker's time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Next up is Mr. Chapel.
Hello, I'm Cale Chappell. I live at 6435 El Caminito de Guadalupe Road Northwest, and I have a business, Fiber Arts on 4th at 6463 4th Street. Thank you for my 3 minutes. I will have 3 quick things. Unfortunately, I'm unable to stay for the whole agenda, so I have 3 quick things. One, I just wanted to say how wonderful the event was at the Agri-Nature Center on Sunday, the Lavender and Garlic events. That was a lot of fun, and I hope to see more things like that happening in the community. Just a great community building event. Second, on LIDA, very pleased that we passed LIDA, and I see that's on the agenda. I just wanted to give a suggestion and encouragement to, I don't know how the whole system works, but whoever's making the decisions on where to grant the money, that we think about the monies being generated by GRT generating businesses. The revenue that comes from that GRT funds the LIDA. So being able to use that to support some of those GRT revenue generating businesses could maybe be a priority. And the last thing, this is to my best understanding, the new signage code doesn't really affect me. I have, my old signs are permitted under the old code, but I noticed that there's a maximum of 20 square foot of signage on a business. And so if you look at like the businesses at the trailhead at Chamisal, their frontage might be 100 square feet maximum, 80 square feet to 4th Street. And some other businesses like mine, we have a full acre, 5,000 square foot building. And just to have the same amount of signage didn't seem to make sense to me. The old code used a percentage of like the face of the building that was facing 4th Street or something like that. And that percentage seemed to make better sense when you're comparing a larger building and business to a micro one. So that's it. Thank you very much for my time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chapel, we will be hearing this on tonight's agenda and then again in the next meeting in August if you would like to provide further comments during that item of business. Also, we have Ms. Teresa Rayo.
Teresa Rael, 1005 El Alhambra Circle. So I really want to thank the village for making these magnets. I asked for them, a few months ago. They have important phone numbers, so they're on the table if anybody would like. So thank you. And then I see it's on the agenda, and I saw it, the proclamation for National Night Out. So these flyers that you see around the village or on the back table are all about National Night Out. So you can read further about it, since I'm not supposed to talk about it. but come on out. It's a neighborly thing.
Thank you so much. Mr. Vincent Sanchez?
Well, Vince is walking up. I just want to say to Teresa, thank you so much for that suggestion. I think those little magnets have been a hit. Lots of folks are taking advantage of it. Very practical solution. Thank you so much. Sorry, Vince, go ahead.
Vincent Sanchez, 6802 Rio Grande. I'm here tonight with disappointment and continued and growing frustration. I'm forced to write formal demand letters to my neighbors over clear zoning violations affecting my irrigation easement and obstruction of irrigation water flow. This should not be my family's financial responsibility to solely enforce village zoning and state statutes the village is bound by. The village has both the authority and the duty to enforce its own ordinances pursuant to New Mexico state statutes. Instead, the village claims no authority, but will inequitably require the removal of structures and fences for others. The village must fulfill its enforcement responsibilities and stop placing the burden on the citizens when the zoning department has the authority. Why should the appeal of V2602 be denied to Sharon Cordova and be required to remove a portion of her fence and move her structure when my own neighbors are not? What makes them so special? Why are my concerns falling on deaf ears for years now? Village citizens deserve consistency, not diametrically opposed rule changes that hallmark characteristics directly responsible for the increased value we all share in Los Ranchos. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. David Montoya?
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Trustees. I appreciate this time, and I thank you again for the work that you do selflessly for our village. But I really enjoyed the earlier speakers that came up, and all of them, in a way, are talking about us caring for and respecting what we have in this village, because it's a treasure. We have a treasure that that the rest of the valley, the rest of our surrounding communities look at with envy. And I think, what he talked about with piles of debris, non-working fire hydrants, and other issues such as those, I think that we are obligated and we should be careful to protect those. And along with that, right now there's a big heavy topic regarding the acequias and setbacks. What I'd like to consider is that the board would, at some time, the mayor, look to arrange an acequia committee that will further protect our acequias and really embrace them so that people can continue to walk along them. And I think that there is a real problem because private land ownership at this time in our life is superseding the public's right to use our acequias. And I think a committee should be put together before we make any decisions on such a really sensitive and important subject like the acequias through our village that really is our cherished heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. And with that, Mayor and Trustees, that concludes public comment.
All right, thank you very much. Trustees, I'm going to throw you a curve a bit. I want to honor a request that was made several times, and I would like to see if we can maybe have this conversation. Trustee Edward had requested a couple of meetings ago that maybe we give the trustee reports an opportunity to happen earlier in the meeting so that more people who are either in the audience or at home can listen to those reports at least so that, and that they happen earlier in the proceedings. So here's my thought in terms of how we might handle this, and I wanted to get your all's perspective. We have public comment. We gave everyone 3 minutes. I think I would be inclined to give each of the trustees an amount of time, because if not, we could be here later into the evening. But in order to do it early in the process so that more folks can hear the concerns, so My thought would be that we would, for tonight, do a trial run and move the trustee reports to right after the public comments, and give each one of you up to 3 to 4 minutes to talk about the issues that you all are working on, or have concerns or what have you. And then that way we are guaranteed that we now can move the meeting and continue with the other issues that we have on our agenda. So if anybody's not, if you all have concern with that, please let me know. If not, we can move to that order of business. You all good with that?
I'm good.
All right. Well, then let's go then to trustee reports here. We'll start with trustee Edwards.
Do I get an A if I go first? A little easier
Absolutely.
grading?
Well, you know, I think I think you made a good point, so I'm trying to honor your request and see how it works.
Man, I tell you what, you're listening and taking action on the things you hear, so I appreciate that. It's a good sign of leadership. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, and our commentary seems to change from week to week, and then we also have reoccurring commentary as a trustee, if everybody's listening. Some of my things are redundant and some of them are not. One of the first things I'd like to talk about, because I feel a little bit in the dark about it, is that I don't know if silence is a good thing or is silence out of my own ignorance, and that is understanding what is currently going on with the balance of the land at 4th and Osuna for lots 4, 5, and 6. I think that would be something nice for the community to have. And to the extent that it represents a fairly large percentage of our land holdings as a community, maybe that should be on a regular, at the very least, bi-monthly report as to what's going on. The other thing I'd like to make sure that we don't forget, in some of the prior meetings in addressing the elements relating to LIDA, is how we can adjust the zoning code to make some modifications to existing buildings easier so that it's not such a long, arduous process for a new business to come into a current building or a modification like in the restaurant situation. I think we talked about that, Shannon. I also want to bring up something interesting. I've been traveling around following my son playing basketball, and I was coming back on a plane, and one of the pilots for Southwest Airlines, who grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania, has lived in Albuquerque for quite some time and would love to live in the valley in Los Ranchos. And he talked about, we have a special character here, and I think Dave Montoya is right. We have a special place to live here. And as soon as you begin to make certain changes, you'll never be able to undo those changes. You can pull weeds, but you can't pull up concrete. Once the concrete's there, it's there forever. And so when it comes to these things, I bring up that point specifically because he loved that property at the corner of Guadalupe Trail and Chavez, back when it was for sale around COVID times. And he hadn't been down lately to the valley, and he was curious what was going on, and I told him, and he says, oh my gosh. He says, in the farming community where I grew up in Pennsylvania, they have been vehement about preserving open space because they have come to the realization that this stuff just doesn't come back. It's not like a flowering fruit tree that you're going to get fruit every year and it comes back. It just doesn't. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I think that the elements relating to the zoning changes to maybe setbacks being less or eliminating those against acequias is another one of those little chipping away things that I think is dangerous for our community. Once you take away something like that, you're not going to get it back. And so I think that there needs to be more community awareness and involvement relating to this modification of the acequia setbacks. Because at the end of the day, if you can't get water places, you're not going to irrigate. And once you lose the open space that people love you for, you're just like everybody else. And we're not like everybody else. We have something special. We want to remain a special place. So I appreciate you giving me the time to chat, and I'll pass the torch.
All right, very good. Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Trustee Reyna?
Curveball. Okay.
There you go, man.
The, yeah, just a couple of things.
one is I've continued to try and get attention from APS to, to really better serve the communities, especially in the valley areas. And I think as Trustee Edward had expressed at an earlier meeting, you can really see the difference in the schools. If you go down the valley and then you go to the west side and the east side, it's a big difference. The reason I bring it up is that, that APS now is doing construction at Taylor. It looks like that construction is going to be put back another year. So that's going to be another year without students being able to have at least the start of a new classroom building. What they're working on right now is the administrative building, which I quite don't understand how that became a higher priority than better serving our kids. And the phase 2 project has not been finalized yet and has not been put out to bid. The other part of it, though, I think what we need to be concerned about, and again, Trustee Edward and I have talked about this, is that parents and families who are looking to move to a community, they follow schools. They follow schools. And if our schools are not at the same level as other schools in the district, then we're in trouble. We're in trouble. If we're trying to invite younger families to move here, we need to start by making sure that the schools are going to be effective and they're going to be efficient and give kids the education that they deserve. The other thing that I just wanted to venture on is, I'm serving as a member of the Metropolitan Transportation Board with the Council of Governments. And the kind of projects that they are really talking about and that they get our input on are projects that are huge, multi-million-dollar projects. And what I've tried to do is to talk to some of the members of the board who are my counterparts in other communities about bringing it down to a more practical level. Because we've got, again, the issues with Paseo. We've got issues of folks who are traveling from the east side to the west side and up to Rio Rancho. And those kinds of problems are going to continue until we deal with Alameda, until we deal with 2nd Street, and their bottlenecks. And of course, what happens is that we get cars that travel through the village in order to get to Rio Grande, in order to, again, move to the west side. So, but it's going to take a larger community of interest in order to get this done. The village by itself, possibly working with Corrales, with the, with the city, with the county, with Rio Rancho, we all have similar interests here. And I think that we need to be more on top of it. Just as, finally, just give a kudos, a shout out to Aaron and the staff at the Ag Center. The festival that they had over the weekend was wonderful on Sunday, and I showed up a bit late, but a lot of people there. So thanks to she and her staff, the vendors, the volunteers that helped make it happen. Looking forward to additional kinds of projects like this that can invite people to the village.
All right, thank you. Trustee Kiefer.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, talk about being put on the spot. So I had my July talk tea after taking the month of June off, and had great turnout at Los Poblanos, and it's always a beautiful area to go to. And I guess the best analogy of what I hear over and over and over is the motto of KISS, right? Keep it simple, you know what, silly, right? I think the concern that I hear is why aren't we doing our own, why aren't we doing our own permitting? Why are we outsourcing so much stuff to Bernalillo County? And I know one of the recommendations that I had, I think, talked to you, Mayor, about, and I know you were in favor of it, is, hey, even if we're partnering with Bernalillo County, maybe we can get a physical body here in our office, so that when Shanna has something, Shanna can run it to county right away, or county can run it to Shanna right away, so that the permitting process happens smoother, and not even just smoother, but also to the point that people can't go behind the scenes and say, oh, I just thought I needed an approval from Bernalillo County, and I didn't know that I needed a permit from the village. I didn't realize the village was its own municipality, which we're hearing and seeing a lot of. So at least if there's a physical person, because I think it kind of goes back to Trustee Edwards' points. What I keep hearing is, and to David Montoya saying, let's beautify what we have. Let's protect what we have. You know, a lot of people are complaining about the landscaping in various areas of the village, saying it's just not being taken care of. It looks pretty trashy. Neighbors' properties look pretty trashy. And, you know, I mentioned bringing up ordinances, and the sentiment is we don't need more ordinances. We have great ordinances that have protected us. We need enforcement of those ordinances, and it's not happening. So that's the takeaway from the talk team. My own personal questions that I had, and something I know it has been brought or explored, or I shouldn't say I know, I understand it has been explored multiple times, many, many years ago. I don't know how recent, but I don't know if it's something maybe we can, you know, Mayor and you and I can kind of work on and explore one more time, is potentially the village getting its own zip code. Because I think we lose a lot of our GRT, a lot of bleeding, because 87107 is a huge zip code, and a lot of it's in Albuquerque, majority of it's in Albuquerque, and you have 87109, which again is split. And, you know, a lot of these payroll companies do their GRT in their shop systems based on zip codes. And so if we could have a unique zip code for ourselves, we can program our own GRT and make sure that we get our own data dump and maybe stop some of the bleeding that we see all the time. That was one thing. The other thing is, two more things. The idea for, at the next Globitos, to have a drone.
What did you say?
To have a drone.
No, what did you say before that?
At the next Globitos.
Oh, okay.
To have a drone, because the footage that we could obtain for that and then use for marketing, I think would be super, super cool. Put it on social media, put it, you know, use it as a Los Ranchos thing. And then finally, I wanted to follow up, and please forgive me if I lost my mind and missed this, but we had a resolution 2025-0905 back in September, where Shanna, you were going to produce a report on comparisons of peer code reviews of the setbacks of similar like entities like Corrales, Bosque Farms, Santa Fe, addressing density, setbacks, size requirements, building heights, to kind of bring us the best of the best. And I don't recall that being done.
Mayor Rial, Trustee Kiefer, that analysis has not been done. I will go back and revisit that resolution and look at what was called for, and apologies for not getting that to you yet.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure I didn't miss it, and I know this was done under the old board, so I think it would be something that this board would look forward into seeing as well. Because I think that's gonna help us kind of set the, start making decisions of stuff that's already coming before without even a plan of what we want to look like.
Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
very good. You're welcome. Trustee Bowen.
Thank you. So this is not a newsflash for anyone, but surface water supplies remain in critical condition with restrictions to the prior and paramount users, the pueblos in the Mid-Rio Grande region. According to MRGCD, the Mid-Rio Grande Conservancy District, last month, the region exceeded the entire 2025 season restrictions. So if it feels like we are in a world of hurt, it's because we are. There is good news. The low flow channel is coming online and will be able to deliver much better compact compliance and facilitate deliveries year round. So that's helpful because we have those obligations under the compact. But there's a lot of energy and a lot of focus in the Water and Natural Resources Interim Committee and even in the Land Grant Committee meetings that were going on this month with the legislature on funding salt cedar and juniper eradication. Representative Cates, who's across the river from us, noted that MRGCD was awarded $15 million to eradicate invasives in the Bosque, where the #1 water use in the south stretch is invasives. So anyone has got salt cedar hanging out in their back acre, it is a destroyer of water. It just sucks up water like nobody's business. So given the discussion during these committee meetings, I would expect that there'll be legislation both to reduce illegal water use, to require metering across the state, and also to continue funding eradication of invasives. Because at the end of the day, if there isn't water to do agriculture, if there isn't enough efficient ways to make the water deliver our agriculture, then what is the next best and highest value of the land? And that may not be a future that the village wants. Because of the sort of very full agenda today, I know I mentioned the small local business stewardship program in my last month's trustee remarks. I believe that is going to be moving forward at the August Board of Trustees meeting for initial consideration and feedback. And so I look forward to bringing that to you. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of talking to more than a dozen businesses and people who are involved in small business health, and I'm excited about what will come to you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all. I think that the time, I think, was great, and I appreciate you all sharing those thoughts and concerns. And let's now, as I perceive this, as it relates to the reports, John and the staff and I will get all that information and then provide you all with some follow-ups on some of those issues, so that way, number one, the community knows that we follow up on some of those particular items, and so let's see if we can't maybe make that happen. Now, as we go forward, if you all feel comfortable, we'll amend the agenda so that from now on we'll have trustee reports right after public comments and give you all an opportunity to talk about that. All right, let's then go on to the next topic, which is item number 5, which is presentation of proclamations. As Ms. Rael, who was here, I think, is Teresa still here? Yeah. Had indicated she and John and others have been working on a National Night Out program so that we could do something significant in the village, and we have a proclamation, so I'm going to go to our clerk to read the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque proclamation. Whereas on Tuesday, August 4, 2026, residents of the Village of Los Ranchos will have an opportunity to get together in their neighborhoods to participate in the annual National Night Out Against Crime. And whereas National Night Out provides an exceptional opportunity for the Village of Los Ranchos and millions of people around the country to join a national event where thousands of other communities come together to promote cooperative police community crime prevention efforts. And whereas Los Ranchos residents play a vital role in assisting Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department through joint crime and drug prevention efforts in the village. Whereas it is essential that all residents of Los Ranchos be made aware of the importance of community policing partnerships, neighborhood safety, awareness, and cooperation, and the impacts that their participation can have on reducing crime, drugs, and violence. And whereas National Night Out enhances the relationship between neighbors and law enforcement while bringing back a true sense of community. Now therefore, on behalf of Mayor Lawrence Rael and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, I do hereby proclaim August 4th, 2026 as National Night Out Against Crime in the Village and urge all residents to participate in the event on the 4th at the Alfredo Garcia Barn beginning at 6:30 p.m. aimed towards bringing people together to strengthen neighborhood bonds and engage with law enforcement and village officials.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I would say, just for the community as a whole, look, one of the interesting things about living in a small town, as many of us who grew up in small towns, is, and the village, in my opinion, is our small town, is that our communities are only as safe as all of us work together to keep each other safe. And the beauty of being in the village is that we're just big enough and just small enough that we can do that collectively. And so getting everyone together for this National Night Out, we'll have the sheriff will be there, and other folks from public safety will be there to talk directly to community members about issues, et cetera, and obviously the village staff. So I think it's a great opportunity. In the past, we've done, a little, if you will, groups in different parks, et cetera, or different areas of the village, which I think is nice as well because we get to go and see the community. But we wanted to do something that really just kicks off the community spirit that I think we all have here. And this is, I think, a great way to do that. So John and others who have been working on this, thank you very much for getting that put together. And we look forward to seeing all of you there on the 4th. All right, let's move now on to presentations. We have 2 presentations this evening. Interestingly, unlike most other evenings, excuse me, happen to be about roads. So let me ask the county to come up. This is what happens when you eat while you're doing this.
You okay?
Yeah.
Say,
Mr. Eichwald and Bernalillo County is going to talk about 4th Street.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. I'm Rodrigo Eichwald. I am the engineering manager for Bernalillo County, and we're going to talk about our portion of 4th Street where we are doing our road diet. And I'm presenting Audra Gallegos. She's our consultant from Wilson & Company, and she's going to go over the presentation, and then afterwards we can stand for some questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. So for the Bernalillo County 4th Street project, we had a public meeting a couple weeks ago. And so we're going to present to you what we presented at that public meeting. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So our project limits are from Paseo to Alameda. It's about approximately 0.84 miles long. 4th Street in this area does have a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour. And then the roadway is classified as a minor arterial. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the project is for roadway safety, multimodal safety, and traffic calming. And then the purpose of this public meeting that we had was to inform the public of the planned construction activities. Next slide, please. So going through some existing conditions of the project. So today, 4th Street is a 4-lane roadway, 2 lanes in each direction. It is undivided with no multimodal facilities. Next slide, please. So this slide, you could see some of the existing conditions along the corridor. There's some ponding in some areas. As I said, there's no multimodal facilities. and then there's utilities that run along the corridor. So proposed conditions, we are looking at doing a road diet. So this is taking the 4-lane road down to a 3-lane facility. So it'd be 1 lane in each direction with a 2-way left turn lane, bike lane on each side, curb and gutter, and sidewalks. So for the project, the full roadway reconstruction will be from Ortega to Alameda. And then because we are adding curb and gutter to the project, there's gonna be a new storm drain system. And so the storm drain system will start at St. Francis and it'll go south all the way to a pond that's an existing pond at the northeast corner of Paseo and 4th Street. Next slide. And I'm sorry about our slides, they got a little jumbled in here. So the construction schedule, right now we are working things out with the contractor, so right now we have a tentative notice to proceed for construction. So the contract time that we have is, we're gonna have a 60-day ramp-up time, so that gives a contractor 60 days in order to order materials before mobilizing on site. And then they'll have 450 days to complete the project. And so with this, anticipated completion date is not known. It'll be based on the notice to proceed. So during construction, we do have a couple construction phases. So our first phase will be a 1-way only. So with this, the west side of the roadway will be constructed, and the storm drain system will be constructed at that time as well. And then northbound, there will be only 1 lane northbound during this time. So the duration of this construction for this 1-way will be 240 days max is what the contractor is allowed. Next slide, please. So during that time, there will be a detour for that southbound traffic. This slide shows what that detour would look like. Traffic for southbound would be detoured to 2nd Street. We did hear some public feedback, and we met with the mayor and some other village staff. And I have a printout of this, but we are adding some barricades at some of those through streets, like at Ortega, Homeland, St. Francis, that say road closed to through traffic. So that'll help to divert any potential cut through traffic during this time. So after the west side of the roadway will be constructed, traffic will be moved to that side, and at that time, traffic will be opened back up to northbound and southbound. And then eastbound roadway will be constructed. Next slide. So the project contacts, so we have Layla here with the Bernalillo County. She is the project engineer. And then Gabe Chavez is the construction project manager. So we have their contact information on there if there's any questions or concerns during construction. Any questions?
Any questions of our presenters? We can start with you there, Frank, if you like.
Mr. Transportation.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess what I'm concerned about now, so we'll be closing off either a southbound or northbound lane. And then the businesses along that stretch of 4th Street, again, how are people going to be able then to access those businesses so that we can keep them running and they'd be able to get customers that they so desperately need?
So the contractor is required to maintain access to all businesses and residents during construction. So there may be times if they need to build their drive pad that they will coordinate with that business owner or resident on times that a short duration that their driveway may be closed just to tie in those drive pads.
So, yeah, go ahead. I'm
Just
sorry.
to add on to that, the road won't be torn up. It won't be, the trench for the pipe won't be open all the way at one time. We'll be doing like 300-foot sections or so every few days. And so that'll move. And so when we're doing that construction, there may be some, while we're in front of those driveways, there'll be temporary no access for a portion of the day. And once they install the pipe and then recompact it, then there'll be access. So while the road will be closed in the southerly direction, people will still have access to the south or to the west.
So then you're going to then offload traffic that would be typically going north on 4th Street onto 2nd Street. At what point along 4th Street then is the traffic going to be diverted?
So northbound will always be open. It's southbound that will be diverted to 2nd Street. And so if you wanted to go southbound on 4th Street, you would have to go to 2nd Street and then loop around back up to go northbound on 4th Street.
To El Pueblo.
Okay, and so then are there any kind of ways that you could try to reduce that traffic onto 2nd Street? Because I heard it going to the public meeting that the folks on 2nd Street were not very happy at all, because it's going to be an increased traffic to them in addition to what they already have.
Well, we're trying to prevent people from cut across traffic, but as far as reducing traffic, it's not predicted that 100% of the people will all take 2nd Street all the way down. I mean, you can still go up Alameda to the freeway. There's other ways for people to go, but hopefully more people will take Alameda all the way to the freeway. We can only suggest the traffic routes. We can't necessarily make people follow them. So, people are gonna do what people are gonna do.
Okay, all right, and this is based then on a traffic study that was done through the Council of Governments?
Well, the detour is based on our team's construction knowledge. There was a study done for the project, but since the construction is a temporary condition, you don't do a traffic study, or we did not do a traffic study on that because it's a temporary condition, and you don't normally do a traffic study for a temporary condition.
Okay, but this is gonna take, 15 months to do?
Well, it'll be closed in one direction for 240 days. And then it'll open up in two-way traffic after the storm drain is installed.
Okay, so the diet then is, so I can understand it, is directed only at reducing the lanes to one lane each way, and then you've got a median in the middle.
Yes.
Center turn lane.
Yes, so it's similar to what the village has currently striped out south of Ortega, and then what currently the county has north of Alameda. So this is the last stretch that isn't dieted.
So then the end of this, the end product of this then is going to hopefully reduce the speed of the traffic as well, okay? What about any kind of landscaping within the median that would also help to reduce traffic?
So right now, it's a two-way left turn lane. So what that does is help vehicles get out of that through lane in order to make left turns into businesses and residents and not impact the through traffic. So there's no landscaping as part of this project. In the Bernalillo County project, bike lanes are used within that right-of-way space for multimodal.
Okay, I can pass on to my fellow trustees.
Okay, anybody else have any thoughts? Trustee Baldwin.
So following up on Trustee Reinau's comments, In terms of the detour route, it looks like somebody would be potentially coming down Alameda, and it would say, no, you can't take a right on Fourth to go southbound, you have to go to Second. You either go down Second to go wherever you're gonna go, or you go down Second and then cut back in to then swing back north if you're trying to access a west side of the road business or an east side, but that's the only way to do that. What thoughts or any sort of approach have you considered in terms of folks hopping off on Rio Grande? Like not even getting to Fourth because they know Fourth southbound is closed. And then obviously village residents will know how to move through the side streets. But I'm just thinking, is there a trigger to see if there's a dramatic increase in the diversion ahead of Fourth, not after Fourth, that happens? Will there be a way to modify or accommodate that?
There's not a way where we can divert traffic from Rio Grande. We don't know who are the cut through traffic and who are the folks that are historically using that route.
Okay, again, I was more curious if you're seeing like a significant uptick in traffic counts on Rio Grande. Is there a way to communicate the pattern that we're seeing and then maybe make some early signage saying detours to Second?
So Rio Grande is fairly outside of our construction zone. So we, like I said before, we can't anticipate how everybody's gonna act and people are gonna do what they're gonna do. And I understand. However, if the village notices that there is an uptick in traffic, we can try to work and see what we can do. I mean, the most we can do is put signs that says no detour traffic on Rio Grande and put up a sign, and that would be about it.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Just a question.
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to say that. I mean, that would be the most we could do. You know.
Okay, thank you. Your current condition indicates the posted speed limit is 35 miles an hour. With that traffic and that road narrowing, is the intent to reduce the speed to 25 miles an hour?
The speed limit stays the same within the village project at 25, but then it'll remain 35 from the county north and continue 35 past Alameda.
Well,
Update. Okay.
We've been speaking with our traffic engineer, and they were looking at reducing it to 25. I don't know if there was a final determination on that, but it's being considered.
Thank you, because I think, again, if you're having a road condition be similar all the way down 4th south of Alameda, 1 lane north, 1 lane south, and a middle turn lane, to suddenly have different, like 10 mile an hour difference in speed creates problems with people end up speeding in the village or figuring that they can take off as they hit the county line. So it just be safer all around for all the multimodal things you're trying to do if that speed is at 25 miles an hour.
It's being considered.
Thank you. So on the bike paths come down, and at the end of the project, where do they go? Because there isn't a bike path that the village has on 4th Street to connect to it. So what's the plan?
So there at Ortega, there's gonna be bike ramps, and so that'll let bicyclists get off and onto the sidewalk. And then just south of Ortega, there will be a hawk signal, pedestrian hybrid beacon. And so that'll allow pedestrians and bicyclists to cross. And then the village will have a future project that will have a multi-use trail on the west side of 4th Street. And so that's where bicyclists would continue down.
And that would connect to the trail along Paseo.
Thank you. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, Trustee Edwards.
How did you know?
I just had, you were getting geared up there, I could tell.
Hey, thank you very much. Great comments, by the way, you guys. So this project floods my mind with so many different thoughts. I mean, one of the first thoughts when you say you're going to reduce the speed to 25 on 4th Street, that's a big fat red invitation to drive more cars on Rio Grande Boulevard. People pick driving on 4th Street now because it's a expeditious and fast way to get to where somebody needs to go. And so that draws in the driver. But if that driver is now going to have to go the exact same speed, maybe even slower, or equal to that of any other road, then that other road now becomes a new alternative that was never an alternative before. And I don't know, and I don't want to be critique. You guys are in a tough position. You're kind of the messenger. But it is concerning to me that some of these road diets are going to have a material consequence. And if the speed limit's going to be 25, you will have a lot of more cars on Rio Grande Boulevard. And I think we have a presentation tonight about Rio Grande Boulevard, is that correct? Is there any kind of discussion about that? I mean, because you say that you're thinking of slowing it down. I hope that you consider that, because the village is becoming the safety release valve for the greater region's transportation problems. And I think that some of these things are going to make those, our safety relief valve is going to have a whistle attached to it, and there's going to be a lot of voices coming with that. Has anybody talked about the fact that if you slow this traffic down, it's going to push it onto other streets because of that queuing theory that happens in transportation planning?
So if, on the county project, if the speed limit is reduced to 25, it's to match everything that's already 25 south.
Yeah.
And so if
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to match up with what the village has, and if the village, we are continuing a project the village has already started and matching the lanes that you all have. The only difference between our project and your project is we have bike lanes and you guys have landscaping. So we are following your lead as far as completing a section of road so that it's uniform from Chavez all the way down to 2nd Street.
Yeah.
So, we're basically our road isn't intended to do that. If that's happening because of things that have happened already, I'm not sure what to say as far as that's concerned. We can't control the way people drive. And, I grew up in Corrales, and I love, when I grow up, I want to live here because it's, like you guys said, this place is awesome. Fortunately, you're in the middle of everything, and I don't know how you get around people not driving through here. I worked on the sewer project 15, 20 years ago when we installed sewer along Rio Grande, and I remember when Mayor Abraham let us close the road so we can do that, and I know everybody was super happy that we closed Rio Grande for a year because nobody was driving through the village.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think that's possible with
I got you.
any of these projects, but I sympathize with you all, but I don't know what to say as far as traffic being redirected because of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's a tough thing that you're about. One of the things I do have a concern with, and I was at your presentation the other day, and you saw this on Central Boulevard, you saw this on Rio Grande, not Rio Grande, but 4th on the changes here. These businesses could have a make or break if this thing's going to be 450 days, certainly 240 days. And if it's like the APS project that's being run over at Taylor, it's going to be 550 days. I'm a small business owner. If my revenue's materially changed over 300 days, new plans need to happen. And to that extent, I got to believe somewhere there is funding available to either assist these businesses and they can shut their doors and improve themselves. So when the road is open and run, they have a better business to offer. And this is the consequence of progress, I get that. But at the prior presentation, you guys said nothing was done, and nothing was done because of anti-donation. I don't think in protecting our local businesses and our citizens, that's in the form of an economic windfall, which is, I think, anti-donation is all about. And whoever the powers are that be within your organization, I think they really seriously need to reconsider and revisit this. What is it that we can do I mean, if it's a restaurant, can you guys give them more business? I mean, they need to do something to keep the doors open. There's a gentleman right back there, Dave Montoya. He's got a restaurant with his family, and I guarantee you that business is going to be greatly affected, and it's a little jewel and gem of the North Valley. I don't want them closing. I don't want them so stressed out that they materially change themselves and the ambiance of our community because this basic element has not gone into the thinking. You get me?
Yes, sir.
And then the last thing I want to say is I was just in Sacramento. Beautiful city. If you guys haven't been to Sacramento, it's actually quite beautiful. I was in Roseville. And the one thing that was really stood out to me is that there was trees, more trees, and beautiful landscaping. And if we can't have every single part of our village be an alfalfa field or an orchard, we should at least make our thoroughfares resemble a rural open green area. And this project is urban, 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 urban. There's nothing about it that says, hey, you're in the Greenbelt. Hey, you're in the valley. There's not an iota of it. And I think that that is a major design flaw. And I think that if you can't get it in this round of funding, then somebody needs to sponsor funding to revisit this project and insert those things into it. Because you know what? We don't visit places that suck. We visit nice places. We want to live in those nice places. And this project is not about nice places.
Okay. Go ahead, Rodrigo.
So after you, Trustee Edward, and Mayor Rouse, right?
That's okay.
I could with rules of Robert's rules.
And I don't want that to come on you because I know you're not the guy.
Right, but I did discuss this with my boss after the previous meeting, and so, not that anybody wants to use the length of the bridge project as an example, but there were plenty of businesses along Bridge that had could have had the same potential issues, and so one of the things that they did for those businesses is there were signs that said business is open during construction, signs saying this is how you access, Bruno's or whatever different restaurants or businesses are. So we can do that for sure, because we did that for for the bridge project. So that's one thing that we can proactively do to help decrease that problem. So we've thought of that, and as far as the Bernalillo County has an ordinance for complete streets, which is what we followed for having sidewalk and bicycle lanes. And right now that area doesn't have storm drains and there's ponding, and so we're going to be improving. While it might not look like your beautiful part, it still will be an improvement from the ponding and the current roadway, which is falling apart.
Okay, and if I could just make one request. So these ponding areas are going to receive a lot of new water. And to the extent of that, the village, along with actually Mr. Montoya, there's an area to the west of this ponding area that would love to have some additional water. And we have a farm field that's open space that's owned by the village that would love to be irrigated right now. Is there any way that this project can utilize this additional storm water as an irrigation source as opposed to just sitting there stagnant doing nothing?
Well, right now, no, because the project is designed, and it's designed to go to the DOT pond, which we have an agreement with them. For that, we would have had to have an agreement with the village to do that, and that would have been done during the planning process years ago, and so at this point, it is not possible for them.
Well, if you can bring up that idea, I know that that field would look great, and I know that we'd feel a lot better about our community with it being irrigated with effectively free water that otherwise is a liability to the community for kids getting into it, drowning, or mosquitoes and stuff like that.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rodrigo. Let me sort of put a couple of just questions very quickly so that we have a so the community who is listening also can get this information. So when you have, in your beginning of your presentation, you have a 60-day, if that is a 60-day period to have a new contractor selected and have them get, if you mobilize to start the project, is that correct?
No, the 60-day ramp-up time is when the contractor has been selected, and they need to order pipe materials because pipe materials are hard to get, or something like that. Like it's for ordering materials.
Okay.
So we would say get started, and then they would start ordering materials, and they wouldn't be doing any work during that time.
All right.
They don't have to use that, but it's available to them.
Okay, so if you had to just give us a ballpark, because look, this is a really important question for the village as we are embarking on our phase 2 of 4th Street as well. And I want to make sure that we at least have a sense here for the public in terms of the coordination piece. When do you think, if you were to give, I'm not going to hold you to the date, but I just want to have a timeline. Are we thinking that this project will get started in earnest, given what you just said, late November, early December timeframe? Or do you think this is going to go into the first of the year?
My goal is for it to start at the end of this year, late October, November.
All right, so let's say, let's give you a grace period, let's say November, for discussion's sake. So November, and from November, then it's a 450-day project. Just again, just to get to the details. The closure of the southbound lanes on 4th Street will be 200 and how many days?
40.
240 days. All right, so I think those are really important sort of numbers to have so that we know what we're up against. Here's a couple of thoughts. I always agree for the most part with my friend Trustee Edwards. I do have a bit of a disagreement on one piece, but I will save that for later. I think it's important to recognize that the COG has data that you all are aware of through your membership on the COG that talks about the number of commuters that come from the west side that use Alameda to cross the river to get to the east side. We also have numbers in terms of how many folks use Rio Grande Boulevard to commute to downtown or to other places on Rio Grande. We also know that they use 4th Street and they use, obviously, 2nd Street under the transportation plan is the commuter route. So from the perspective of you all putting more traffic onto the commuter route, that's actually the right thing to do. That route actually is the commuter route. In spite of the fact that I know that my friends that live, including a family member who lives on 2nd Street, is probably not happy to hear that. But that has always been designated as the commuter route in the transportation plan for the region back since I was the director of and before that. My point simply being, though, is this, is that as we all know, traffic is like water, it finds a place of least resistance. And our dilemma has been in Rio Grande is that Rio Grande has no lights at all. We have stop signs, and people coming across the river are gonna find themselves trying to figure out, what are we gonna do when we get to 2nd Street, when we have more volume of cars trying to go south? And so the question is, I would like for you all to look at what are you doing as it relates to the signals on 2nd and Alameda to encourage the flow of traffic onto 2nd Street so that you can make sure that you get the throughput on 2nd. And that would also include a really bad intersection, which is El Pueblo and 2nd. That intersection is going to be a bottleneck for everyone, whether you're coming into the village or not. And as I said to you all in our meetings, and I just want to make sure that we get it on the table, and that is that we're about opening up a middle school on the corner of El Pueblo and 2nd with about 300 kids who are going to be having their families bring them into school every day. At the same time, we're having this project. And look, I want to make sure that for the community and for myself, look, we want the improvements. And I welcome the fact that the county has invested money on that corridor because it does need a lot of work. And so I appreciate that. And I know there's pain with transportation systems, but I just want to present to you a couple of things that really do create a problem for the village. without making those signals, or those signalized, if you will, improvements on Second and Alameda, what's gonna happen is that folks are gonna start backing up on Alameda in the morning, and they're gonna find either Rio Grande Boulevard, which is gonna be I can guarantee you, we're gonna see a huge increase on traffic on Rio Grande. And we're also probably gonna see some folks trying to cut through on Little Guadalupe Trail to get over to Ortega and try and figure out if they can navigate Ortega onto Fourth or navigate Ortega back to to Rio Grande. So I just want to make sure that you all, and I know you maybe had those conversations, we just got to be mindful that we've got to figure out how we're going to mitigate those, right? And then I think the last piece is, I do appreciate you all bringing to our attention the fact that, and trying to solve the issue. I don't want Ortega to be the default, if you will, last minute crossover to Rio Grande. That road is not capable of handling any more volume than it already has today. And adding more to that road is gonna create a bottleneck at Rio Grande and Ortega. And look, El Pueblo is also, as you all know, there's a school in El Pueblo. So there's a lot of impacts to those roads. Here's the last piece. I also worry about not just the businesses between Alameda and Ortega that are directly impacted, like the Great Restaurant and other things that are along that corridor. But look, a lot of our businesses in the village are gonna be impacted, because if people are thinking, if they're coming from Bernalillo or points north, and say, well, I'm just gonna go down and get a cup of coffee at the bakery, or I'm gonna go to Dan's Boots and Settle to get feed for the chickens or what have you, they now have to go all the way around and come back, and they're gonna get discouraged. And I can almost see people saying, well, there's other alternatives, right? So there's gonna be an impact to our businesses, and I think that's what you're hearing from us as well, is that, we gotta be mindful that if we can make sure that the closures are done as quickly as possible. And then where I will disagree with my friend a bit here, look, I think it has to be 25. And I'll tell you why. It has to be 25 from Ortega all the way to Alameda, because the neighbors on the corner of Ortega and 4th Street call me all the time about drag racing happening in that corridor. Reducing that road to 2 lanes, where I get the perspective that we're gonna be pushing commuters to other roads, and I understand that as well. But what I don't wanna see is people driving 25 miles going past Blake's, getting out to the top of the ramp, going northbound, and all of a sudden they go to 35, which means they're driving like 55. And that intersection at Ortega and 4th, in my opinion, is a really dangerous intersection, even as it is today. The line of sight is terrible. Trying to figure out how we slow traffic down through that area, I think, is doing the responsible thing for our neighbors, both on either side of our jurisdictions, if you will, the county and the village. And then last but not least, at any point that you all consider doing this as a 24/7 project, where you could cut the time in half, and I realize it's about money, so I don't question that, but if this was a 24/7 construction project, at least for the pipe to get laid, so that they would go in there and do it, at night or and 24/7, that it might cut that time in half. Even if the rest of the project did take the rest of the time, I would just urge you all to think about that idea, just so that way we mitigate the closure of the road and mitigate, if you will, the impact on the businesses, for the project. So, I know you don't have that information off the top of your head, and you can't make that call tonight, but what you're hearing from all of us is that we're happy about the project. Please don't misunderstand me. We want to get it done, but we just want to make sure that we have explored every option. And then the one thing that Trustee Edwards did make that I think is really important to think about, I would urge the county not to put sidewalks. I would urge the county to do the road and do the basic infrastructure, and come back and work with us to figure out how we make that into a rural, if you will, landscape project that looks rural like the rest of the village does. And because my concern with sidewalks has always been, even when I was at the city, You put a sidewalk in, and I feel terrible because people on wheelchairs, people get on a wheelchair and they're going down a sidewalk, and where are they gonna go when they get to the end of the sidewalk? We don't have sidewalks in the village. You don't have sidewalks north of Alameda. You end up dumping people into the streets. I understand the rationale for doing it, and don't, again, it's not a criticism, as my wife would say, it's an observation. But putting sidewalks, I think, creates this sense that eventually the rest of the sidewalks are gonna be constructed. Unless you guys are telling me you're gonna continue putting sidewalks north of Alameda all the way to Roy, which I don't think you guys have in the plan. And I can certainly tell you that right now, our plan is to build, the portion, if you will, from Ortega all the way to the current, if you will, at Pueblo Solano. We will have some sidewalks through there and some, but it's not for a long, long time. And I just don't want to see a sidewalk that's going to be a path to nowhere. But I think that it would be a way to save some money and maybe do some more mitigation on the actual project. But look, Rodrigo, we all have ideas, and I'm sure you've heard 1,000 of them from everyone else. I do want you to know that we do appreciate the project. I just would like for you to take those issues into consideration.
One other little point.
Go ahead, Trustee.
Is there any chance that this can start after, October 15th? I mean, we have the chance of this village business corridor losing 2 balloon festivals.
Right.
Man, that's rough. So I would hope that at least the construction and lane closures don't occur until after the last balloon has left. And if you did, I love that suggestion, the 24/7. Yeah. Man, that would compress this, and we could actually enjoy 2 balloon festivals.
Right.
That intersection at 2nd and Alameda is crazy during balloon festival time. Yeah. I mean, it's going to even be more crazy. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks, Rodrigo. Thanks, you guys, for making the presentation.
2 quick things, Mayor, Al, and trustees.
Yeah.
We won't be starting until after Balloon Fiesta for certain.
Okay.
This year.
Okay.
So 1 Balloon Fiesta. As far as the dose sidewalks thing, because we have federal funding, it's required as part of ADA requirements. And so that's probably non-negotiable.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not gonna say, I shouldn't say probably, it's certainly with the way federal requirements are, it's non-negotiable. The only question I have about the 24/7 construction, which we tend to not like to do in areas where there's more residential people, would the construction noise, it's really more quiet here than other places, and you got construction going on for 24 hours a day and people won't be able to sleep. I see that could be a problem. I'm not saying that we're discounting it, but that's also something to consider is night construction. The construction equipment's loud in the middle of the night while people are trying to sleep. It could be a different issue. However, we will go back and take a look at what we can do as far as that's concerned.
No, I appreciate that and respect that. I also know that I'd rather hear noise for 10 days than hear noise for a year. And that may be what we're gonna get. In either case, I realize these projects are not easy. So thank you so much for your time. And let us know if you can keep us posted. As I said to you before, let us know as your project moves along and you're getting to start. If you would please keep let us know administratively so we can keep the community notified and we can support whatever you all need to get
We'll
done.
certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Trustee Kiefer.
it's not a question for them, but maybe something that we need to consider too is as they're updating their timeline, is the timeline for our phase 2 construction.
There's no question our phase 2 construction is going to end up overlapping their project, and so this is why we're all more exercised about this, because one of the things that I think is the most challenging part for government is when citizens that pay taxes to the county and the same citizens that pay taxes to the village look at both of us and say, can't you guys coordinate your projects? Do you have to mess up the entire corridor at one time? And it looks like just from a coming together of the projects that that there might be some overlap, and that's also a very concern for us as we start embarking on getting our project out the door as well. So, so that's why I want to make sure the timing is really super important for us. But good point, Trustee Keeper. All right, with that, we're going to go yet to another road project. We have a presentation from Parametrics. Tyler Pennington is going to talk to us about the study that they did on Rio Grande and some of the recommendations, et cetera, that they posed as we go forward.
He's done. She's done.
Thank you, trustees. Thank you, Mayor. If we could get to the first slide, but I will be presenting as well on half of it, and then Zach Trincoso, my colleague, will be presenting on the other half. Got cut in half.
We have our
No worries, we can swing this without it. Most of it's just words anyways. So again, Mayor, trustees, thank you for taking the time. This is the second BOT meeting that we've held with you guys regarding, quite coincidentally, that in regards to Rio Grande Boulevard traffic calming study that began, and I think we first presented to you guys in February. We're here to give you an update on this. So at this meeting, we're just going to give you a reminder of what the original purpose of the project was, findings from the study, and some potential improvements, as well as next steps. So the original purpose of this project was there is often traffic and speed and safety concerns along the entirety of Rio Grande Boulevard throughout the village limits, essentially the Montano Bridge to Ortega Road. This project came to look at what sort of improvements could be considered along the roadway that could potentially improve safety of not only car users, but also bicyclists, pedestrians, and equestrian users. So last time we told you what we were going to do, here we're going to tell you what we found. And so this included evaluating existing conditions along the roadway, community concerns that we heard from you all, and then Zach will get into some traffic calming measures. Oh, and it looks like we may have a slideshow now. That is the beginning. I think we're on slide 4.
Ooh.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So first thing we came and looked at was, what does the roadway look like within the village? You all know it, but it's good to look at it again. Rio Grande is a north-south running arterial, according to Mid-Region Council of Government. It primarily has 2 lanes, north and south, that are both 11 feet in width, as well as 5-foot shoulders that are frequently used by pedestrians and bicyclists and other users. They are marked throughout as bike shoulders, but not through the entirety. It is posted at 25 miles per hour. Again, keyword posted, as what people drive is a little bit different. A second part of this is we actually did do some traffic counts over, I believe, 48 hours. We did both weekday counts and weekend counts to see what sort of differences we were getting. Essentially, during the weekday, you averaged between 3,800 and 4,500 daily vehicles. That's for north and south. Weekends, you dropped significantly down to about 2,500 vehicles a day. Bicyclists were about 70 per day during the week, and then it almost doubled to about 140 during the weekend. As expected for Rio Grande, its peaks during the week around 7:30 to 8:30 a.m., the typical morning rush, and around 4 to 5 p.m., the typical evening rush. On the weekends, however, you're seeing significantly less. Your peak is around 2:30, 3:30 p.m., and there was no clear PM or AM peak during the weekends. Next slide, please. So after we looked at all of this, we came to you all and said, please give us your thoughts on what you think of Rio Grande Boulevard. So the first time we presented to you all was February 17th, 2026. And from then until March 31st, a online survey was available for anybody to take primarily interested in receiving feedback from village residents. We received 107 responses to the survey, not a bad turnout. We also took some time to meet with individual board members and the mayor as well. And we just used this to provide insights into what the village and its residents were seeing along Rio Grande and what sort of concerns they may have. So next slide, please. What we found was there was a couple areas of interest, namely Montano, Chavez, the Green Valley Road, El Pueblo, and Paseo del Norte crossings. But generally, people were concerned about multiple things along Rio Grande across the entirety of it. Some major level of safety concerns were, interestingly, 60% of people who drive on Rio Grande felt very safe in doing so. However, that almost flipped when you look at people who walk or bike or equestrian along the roadway, with almost 50% saying that they felt unsafe while walking or biking on Rio Grande. Next slide, please. So what this told us was a couple things. It told us that a large portion of people feel unsafe about walking, riding, bicycle, any sort of active transportation mode. The other point that was frequently brought up, and it's been touched on several times, is that cut-through traffic is a problem. What this leads us to is that there's two major problems that need to be looked at along the corridor. And that is, there needs to be some more improvements of safety for active users, meaning bikes, pedestrians, and equestrians, and traffic calming, because the easiest way to get people to consider taking other routes is if this road is not as leisurely and I can't speed along it, it makes me think twice about, do I want to take this road or do I want to go somewhere else? Engineering wise, that's one of the best ways that you can look at trying to deter traffic. Other considerations that was brought up, this is a unique and beautiful community in that it's rural, it's surrounded by larger metropolitan, but we need to consider the rural aspect and the agricultural aesthetic of the village, as well as this is a roadway that has frequent driveways across it. And so these need to be considered, and that you can't cut off access while you're looking at that. So these were considered as part of some solutions. Next slide, please. We also delved a little bit into some crash and safety analysis. Over the most recent 5 years, 42 crashes in the village. Of those, more than about 70% of them are, without looking at the reports, it's hard to know for sure, but generally typical of what you might expect from speeding, which is rear ends, people come up and hit somebody behind them, or angle crashes, somebody trying to pull in and somebody's going way too fast, they hit them. There was also several, meaning about 3 incidents where a bicyclist or a pedestrian was hit as well, which, you know, when you're only looking at 40 crashes, almost 10% is a significant amount. All these both lead back to the thoughts of pedestrian safety and speeds on Rio Grande. Next slide. And this is what I was getting at before in that speed analysis. The last and final aspect that we looked at for this study was speeds. Speed studies have done before. We did another one just to look at what we're seeing in current day. We had previously done one in 2023. Speeds have increased a little bit since then. In general, again, posted at 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. Speeds during the weekday were around 4 to 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. Up there, you'll see 85th percentile speed. What that is that means 85% of drivers are driving at that speed. In this case, you'll notice 33 miles per hour. 85% of drivers are driving that or lower. The reason it's 85% is people who are driving really slow or people who are driving really fast can disproportionately skew these speeds to go up or down. And so they're removed from there. That's why they use 85th percentile speed. What you're looking at here, though, says that generally the FHWA considers speeding to be a problem when you're looking at a mean or average speed of around 5 miles per hour or greater, and an 85th percentile speed of about 7 miles per hour or greater. This roadway is right up against that for both the average speed and the 85th percentile speed. Interestingly enough, the weekends actually do see a little bit higher speeds, likely due to there's less traffic on there. People can drive a little faster without getting slowed down. So I'm going to wrap this up and hand it to Zach real quick. But to recap, we looked at all these things to find out the problem. We need to consider not only operational efficiency, also next slide, please. I forgot about that. Thank you. Where could we, operational efficiency, multimodal safety is a big one. And then the functionality of the roadway, as well as the general aesthetic characteristics of the roadway of this village. Ultimately, the conditions indicate two things, as I already mentioned. We need to look at pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian facilities and potential reduction of speeds along Rio Grande. And that leads us to a couple of potential traffic calming strategies that we're going to discuss with you. Zach, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, trustees, for having us today. So yeah, I want to touch on, can you go to the next slide, please? Some of the potential traffic calming strategies to consider for this roadway. And so there's different speed reduction mechanisms that are within our toolkit for traffic calming. Some of them are pinch points, speed reduction, high visibility striping, and buffered bike lanes. Those are just some of the things kind of in our toolkit. I do mention speed reduction. That's not something we're going to expand on further, but it's something that was highly mentioned from the public and from the trustees here as kind of a traffic calming strategy. That is something that would have to be coordinated with local law enforcement, and it is a little bit out of our control for what we can do with the roadway. So achieving a reduction in speeds can use a variety of traffic calming strategies. While certain speed controls actually alter the roadway, others are more of a perceived psychological like pinch points. And so some of the things like I previously mentioned we're going to talk about are these pinch points. And so pinch points can vary anything from buffered bike lanes to protected bike lanes to medians or a variation of all three. And those are some of the strategies we think would be most beneficial for roadways like Rio Grande. Next slide, please. So there's three key areas, although we've looked at a lot of different areas along this corridor, there's three key areas that we thought could benefit most and were worth highlighting in today's presentation. Those areas we're going to talk about today are the Buffalo Curve, right in front of the Village Hall in Hartnett Park, and then the North Village entrance corridor where there's a lot of different trail crossing features where you experience a lot of pedestrians, equestrians, and bicycles. Really, to reiterate some of the things I'm going to go over today, and Tyler had previously mentioned on this, a lot of these same ideas and pinch points and things we're going to show today are things we can implement throughout the corridor, given that they still allow access, we have right-of-way, and they kind of meet the minimum requirements for roadway design. Next slide, please. So our first thing we're going to touch on is kind of the North Village entrance. Although it's not right where the village, people come into the village on Rio Grande, it's an area where there's significant equestrian, pedestrian, and bicycle activity, and there's also some issues with sight distance. So some of the characteristics and public input we received are speeding. This is an area that had crashes throughout kind of the whole corridor. Significant trail user presence and significant bicycle presence. So some of the improvements you'll see are these high visibility green pavement, trail crossing signage, an RRFB, which is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. It's a push activated crossing feature, and landscape medians. All of these can really be subbed in and subbed out as we kind of see fit, but what we're going to show is kind of what we think would be a good option or starting point for discussion with the village trustees. Some of the outcomes we're trying to achieve are increased visibility, driver awareness, and decreasing speeds, which was one of the highest rated things. So next slide, please. So to try and explain this, so there's a couple different, there's two slides to this same location near the North Village entrance. What we're looking to achieve is to try and create, one, a pinch point, but two, kind of a gateway location coming into the village from the county. So what this would do is we have potential crossing locations. There's no defined crossing, and I know there's a lot of signage out there already, and we'd like to kind of build upon some of the signage that's already out there for all these crossings. in particular for the Paseo del Norte Trail crossing. But to kind of sum up what we're showing here is these pinch points, what they do is they narrow the lane, or at least visually narrow the lane with some hardscapes, landscaped medians, and other things to make cars feel like they're entering either a slower traffic zone or an area to anticipate high pedestrian or bicycle activities. So we kind of show two of these. We show one with buffered bike lanes. We show one with protected bike lanes. The buffered bike lanes being a little further north, and the protected bike lanes being on the southern side. We don't elaborate too much on these at this time, but the idea would be to hopefully introduce some other landscaping and other things, which are also traffic calming features in and of themselves. So for this corridor as a whole, and again, the next slide goes a little further to the south, there's really three different crossings. There's equestrian crossings, there's a trail crossing, and there's a crossing for the ditch users. If we want to implement more crosswalks, that's another thing we can also introduce and kind of being a potential crossing location. There's an image of what a small landscaped median might look like. We don't have a whole lot of room to play with along Rio Grande, but there is room to play with. There is bike lanes, and there are lanes that sometimes are wider than 11.5 feet. Next slide, please. So another area of concern from both village staff and from the public was the buffalo curve. And so the buffalo curve, for a couple reasons, there's some poor sight distance, there's some poor access from Eeks and from Rio Grande Place, I apologize. And so what we would like to kind of look at as an option is really introducing a mini roundabout at one of these locations. I don't think we would want to put a mini roundabout at both locations, but kind of visually showing what a roundabout would look like at either one of those locations. What a roundabout would do is slow traffic coming in and out of either side of this. It also provides improved sight distance and improved access for both the side roads that have poor sight distance and access today. The roundabout on the north side obviously has a little bit more issues with it, with realigning the access to the agricultural center and the acequia that kind of runs along there. So things to consider. This is very visual and conceptual at this point, but something for food for thought, really. Next slide, please. So the next area of concern that we're looking at is right here in front of the Village Hall in Hartnett Park. And so some of the characteristics defined previously were speeding, crashes, and then obviously the excess pedestrians and bikes that cross either during the growers market or other village events. So potential improvements for this would really mimic some of the things along the crossing near Paseo del Norte. So landscaped medians, buffered bike lanes, high visibility, green pavement markings, and some wayfinding signage. Again, we're looking to achieve reinforced roadway user assignments, so making sure that people on the roadway are staying in their lane, ensuring that bikes feel protected coming through this area, whether they're coming in or off Rio Grande or off Chavez Road, and then just reinforcing that driver awareness of potential pedestrians crossing the roadway. Next slide, please. So the concept here really just introduces a couple landscaped medians that help create kind of a natural chicane. So as people are approaching Rio Grande from either the north or the south, they have to deviate coming into the pedestrian crosswalk and really into this whole pedestrian, village hall area. Again, we kind of showed some of the same green pavement. This is a proven way to try and reinforce that there's bikes on the road and to introduce heightened awareness for pedestrians and for bikes. Although it's really just for bikes, it really helps the traveling public understand that there may be people on the road. Additionally, we showed some very conceptual wayfinding signs that may be good for somewhat of a gateway. Although it's not a gateway to a village, it's just really the gateway to the Village Hall area, Hartnett Park, and some of the busier areas in and around the village. Next slide, please. So next steps for us, we're continuing to look at other options and take into consideration some of the things that you all had mentioned to us. But really, we would like to sit down with the trustees and refine some of our recommendations and finalize our report, and see what the next steps from there are. Is that? With that, I think we'll stand for some questions.
All right, thank you, guys. Any questions from the trustees?
Will we be able to get a copy of this?
Yes.
Because
Right, it wasn't
I'd
in
like
your
to sit
packet.
with it a little bit.
All right, any thoughts now, trustee Edwards?
You know, when you said that the northern part was an area where people drive fast, I wasn't surprised because I drive that, you know, taking my kids to school and stuff and going over the west side. There's a stretch there, and I talked about this with the mayor one time, there's almost no cell phone coverage. And you kind of have to follow me on this. I actually think that the reason people drive through that area fast is that they need to get to their call. They want to get on to the next call. They don't want the call to drop. And I think that I might be guilty of that a couple of times, that you can speed through that little area and there's an absolute dead spot there. And I think that there's another dead spot if you probably monitored speed right there on Rio Grande Boulevard where it comes down right by Dietz Farms, another dead spot. And I bet you'd find people that speed through those sections because they don't want their call to drop, or they're trying to race through, hey, give me 10 seconds, I'm on a dead spot. And I think people accelerate through those areas. So if you could maybe somehow, I don't know if anybody's done any studies on that, but I think that that could be a contributing factor. And then, again, I talk about my trips. I just was in California. Trees, I believe, calm traffic. I have this video where these trees are hanging over the roadway, these big, huge live oaks, and you just want to slow down. It is just so beautiful. And I think there's something to be said about that. It's like you want to preserve that beauty through your day so that you can make it through your day. And so I don't know if that's often discussed, but it is a reflection of what we're trying to create and preserve here on the little bit that we can.
Yeah, so landscaping in general, and trees to that point are a proven countermeasure for reducing traffic and traffic speeds. And any chance we have to do that, I think would receive little to no pushback.
And then the only other thing is you talk about signage. Because we do have horses here, you really don't see much in the way of equestrian signs for horses. And I think that that's another thing that makes us unique. And if anybody's ever been around a horse and they're in a car, they see that because they know the consequences. The horse freaks out. I think that type of a sign is unique and it stands out because nowhere else in the community are people going to see that sign.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just an idea.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate your work and your diligence in helping us out.
Great. Trustee Ram.
Just one for further thought. The northern part of the village, the bridge that crosses Paseo is dangerous.
Yeah.
Is dangerous. I mean, you try to walk, or I walk with my dog all the time, and I have to just stop and wait for the traffic to stop. And I don't know if that's possible to address, but it's something that really needs to be done. I think that with the mayor's help, we kind of put on Rio Grande additional signage, you know, to slow folks down. But the bridge is still going to be a major issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think to that point, we did recognize, and that's something we wanted to highlight tonight, that the site distance, although there's other areas of the village that have poor site distance, coming in and out of that bridge, there's really nothing we, with this funding, and can do about it, other than try and introduce different safety aspects to really inform the public and make sure people are aware of the crossings. And so that's part of some of the green paint, really just lighting this area up and making sure that people are aware that people are crossing, whether they're equestrians, pedestrians, bikes. I didn't really mention it, but I did talk about the RFBs, and I think adding those wherever we see fit would be additional flashers. And I know there is a flasher out there and some signage, but building upon what the village already has and trying to improve the overall safety.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Trustee Kiefer.
Thank you for this. With Trustee Baldwin, wish we had this, a little more time to chew on it and had it in the board packet. So I wanna chew on it some more as well, but I appreciate what we're trying to do and what the intent is. I think the community is very supportive of that and wants to see some changes. I just really challenge you all as we start looking at this to do it in a, Rio Grande's one of our treasure roads. And how do we protect that rural authenticity of that road without it looking like concrete median barriers and very urbanistic?
Yeah.
And so whether that's through textures, whether that's through wood fencing, whether that's through trees, whether that's through, you know, whatever the experts you all come up with, but really trying to protect that heritage of Rio Grande. The other thing was funding, and I don't know if this is something that you would help us with, make recommendations for as we start getting to that point, but we just kind of heard Bernalillo County say, hey, we have to put sidewalks because it's federal funds. Really making sure that whatever we do for the funding for this type of project doesn't have those strings attached to something that we don't want. Because it seems like in the past, we have made decisions based on we want this and with zero regard to the strings that come with those projects. And then finally, I guess my question is, in the responses that you received, any idea of how many people actually use Rio Grande for equestrian purposes? Because I know it's always a hope, but as many times as I've driven Rio Grande, I see more people on the ditches with horses than I do on Rio Grande with horses.
You know, I'll speak to that. Thank you, Trustee. I think there was only one response directly related to equestrian. The equestrian element that we're discussing here is more for people crossing Rio Grande. Up north there's the acequia. I believe people use that often. Not so much for people, not saying they couldn't, but riding along Rio Grande more so as there's a couple spots where there's probably likely people who would use the equestrian or have to cross Rio Grande on their equestrians. I'd have to do a little digging to get you an exact number of the equestrians though.
No problem. I was just kind of curious because that's something that I think we'd want to consider because maybe more people would use it if there was a bigger buffer between horses and cars. Because to Trustee Edwards' point, they can get spooked, and it's not something that we'd want. So thank you for your time.
Question. In the materials, I didn't see the addition of any stop signs. And there's sort of this stretch from Chavez, you know, a pretty long stretch. I was going to say, I mean, it's like a pretty long stretch. And, you know, yeah, Green Valley is a major intersection with Rio Grande, and there isn't a stop sign on Rio Grande. And was that considered as a possibility in this?
We have looked at the addition of stop signs. We haven't really done the analysis to kind of run it by if it would warrant a stop sign. I think if we wanted to, you know, this is a village-run roadway, look at that. That's absolutely something we can recommend in our report.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everybody for the question, and thanks for the presentation, gentlemen. I think the next round, as you all have said, Tyler Wright has said, Zach, we're gonna go back and visit with trustees one more time, and you'll have an opportunity to get more in-depth input. I would just bring two things up for our consideration as we sort of have those conversations. The entrance to the village at Montano has the same sightline issues if you're going southbound. Once you hit the bridge, it dips down, and there is a pedestrian crossing right there as well. I did talk to the city councilor from Albuquerque, whose district abuts the village. And he is willing to enter into an agreement with us and the mayor as well to do a 50-50 split for any kind of improvements we do to that crossing there to help with traffic mitigation, but also to ensure that folks can cross that path right there. You'd be surprised how many folks are using that path a lot. And I get nervous because people oftentimes, once they think that they're past the village, they can start going faster, and then you come across that crossing, and I think that's a real dangerous one as well. And then the other piece I would just simply say, what happens in this project will be really, I think, really important as a whole for the whole community, just because, I mean, as much as we all know that Fourth is a major gross receipts tax corridor for us, you talk to anybody and they think that's all about Rio Grande, that the village is all about Rio Grande. And as Trustee Kiefer says, whatever mitigation measures we want to adapt, I would urge you guys to look at what other communities that are somewhat rural in nature and what kind of applications they use. I was, like my friend Trustee Edwards, once in a while our children take us to different places. My daughter was in California, graduated from college and went to the school. And I even took photos in my car. I think I showed them to you guys, or I showed them at least to Maria, about what they've done to mitigate a very similar corridor where they put, the medians, the pinch points, as you guys call them, so that folks have to, go around. Mm-hmm. But they've dressed them up with shrubbery, et cetera, so it looks very, very authentic. The curbs themselves are not your classic concrete stuff. They're much more sort of softscapes, whatever colors if you want to use, or whatever I think they've used some types of bricks just to make it look like it's not just concrete jungle. And so, thinking about some of those applications would really be helpful. And I want to encourage both of you guys to do this. I want you to tell me how much width do I need on Paseo and how much width do we need on Montano if we're going to have pedestrians, walk along Rio Grande. I mean, look, I get that it may be a reconstruction of a whole bridge, or it may be putting a cantilever on those bridges or something, but I want your ideas about that, because I have talked to the DOT up till I'm blue in the face about going in there and putting at least those delineators on those two bridges. If for no other reason, it's for the current users of the path can at least know not to sway too far into the oncoming traffic, because the white lines, you get to talking and before you know it, you're on it, or And so we need to have those delineators, but I need you guys to put them in the study. I need you guys to tell us, look, that road right there is less than 4 feet. And you know what, with cars going so fast through there, we should have something that separates the cars from the path. Because keep in mind, as we start looking at the full development of Paseo del Norte open space, and that parking lot on the south side of Paseo that's on the west side of Rio Grande, people will park their cars there and walk up the bike trail and then walk along Rio Grande to get to the open space. And the dilemma with the horses, Trustee Kiefer, is that when I've talked to the folks that have horses and they would love to cross Rio Grande, but it was to John's point, they don't find a good place to cross where there's separation enough from them in the cars where these horses don't get spooked. And so if there was a way for us to help provide a crossing that would be helpful to them, they would love to be able to access both east and west of Rio Grande. So anyway, things to think about, but we'll have more conversation. Thank you guys for the presentation. I appreciate the effort so far.
Yep, thank you all, and we'll certainly consider, we'll add that into the presentation or
all right.
Report, so thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you. Trustee Edwards. Okay, we're gonna take a break here since we're almost at the bewitching hour of 8 o'clock, and we still haven't approved the minutes. So let's take 5 minutes before we get to that, and then we'll go on. These two are a little long presentations.
Ask the residents, because the residents, you know, agree that 24 hours is, just do it. Just do it. Is it really?
All right, everyone, we're going to get back to our meeting so that we can get folks out of here at a reasonable hour. We are now on item 6, approval of the minutes of June 16th, 2026, regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It was moved in a second. Are there any corrections or any questions on the minutes? See, go ahead, Trustee Edward.
And I might even mispronounce this, but Carrie Basie Heredia, on 2 or 3 different places, her name is spelled 2 or 3 different ways. And so I'm not sure if that, we should affect that change or respect her and try and get her name spelled correctly in all those different.
Madam Clerk?
Trustee Edward, I see on page 36 of the packet, 8A, line
This is
214 and line 217 have 2 different versions of the spelling of her last name, and we'll make sure that it's corrected accordingly.
Yeah. And then, so the same thing is for our attorney, Mr. Chappell, on page 37.
Okay. Any other?
Thank you, noted.
All right. Those are technical changes. We can make those. Any other corrections? If not, all those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll move to item number 7. Public hearing, resolution number 2026-05-01. A resolution adopting a plan for the administration and use of local economic development act funds. This was deferred by May. This is now the third reading of this, if you will, resolution. And so to explain the resolution one more time and any changes that have occurred, we'll go to Ms. Shanna.
Thank you, Mayor Rial and trustees. As the mayor mentioned, this is the third hearing on this resolution that seeks to adopt a local economic development act or LEDA plan for the village of Los Ranchos. As a very brief reminder, the village successfully enacted a gross receipts tax that went into effect 21 days ago in the village to help build a pot of money to fund LEDA projects. The purpose of the plan, as required by the state, is to tell the public and the potential LEDA applicants how that money will be spent, how they apply for that money, how it will be distributed, etc. For the first 2 hearings on this matter, I presented the plan, the trustees and the public had a conversation about the plan, provided feedback and comments, and it has been iterative. I've gone back to the drawing board, put your comments into the plan, and I will briefly kind of go over the about 6 major changes from last month's hearing. First, Trustee Rhino, you brought up a question about home-based occupations at the June hearing, and this idea that should home-based occupations be eligible for LEDA funding, are they the kind of commercial operation that LEDA funding is really intended for? The kind of policy choice that this plan makes at present, and that is that home-based occupations would not be eligible for LEDA funding. So if someone is registered as a home-based occupation with the village, which we do have data on, they would not be eligible for this funding. That's change number 1. Change number 2 is was brought up by Trustee Baldwin related to the funding categories and just some clarity on the differences between those funding categories. I do think the language as originally drafted crossed wires a little bit, and it just wasn't clear how they were distinct from one another, so that has been since clarified in the plan.
Thank you.
Third, there has been an application cycle added to the LEDA plan. This says that every January, the village will collect applications for potential LEDA funding, and that will go through the committee process. There's a couple of reasons for contemplating an application cycle instead of just taking applications on a rolling basis throughout the year. One, it provides kind of a goalpost for applicants and businesses to know when they need to have their documents ready for the village. 2, it aligns with the village's budget cycle. So as the projects are being reviewed by the committee, as we approach the April, May, June months in which the village is establishing its budget, if there are, or when the time comes for these funds to be allocated, the Board of Trustees will have a really good idea of what projects are to be funded in the upcoming year, and they can make those decisions as a part of the annual budget process. Third was a change related to the board membership. The plan has been clarified that the it's not a board, the review committee is made up of 5 members, it's not 4, it does need to be an odd number. The plan was not worded very clearly to state that, so that's been updated. Thank you for the public comment last month that brought that to light. Both Trustee Kiefer and Trustee Edward brought up this idea of a local residency bonus. So you'll now see in the points section of the plan that if 1 or more individuals who own a majority interest, that's more than 50% of the applicant business, if they reside in the village, they can get a bonus 10 points on top of what could already be awarded. And then lastly, towards the end of the plan, there's a new section about annual reporting, where the staff, that would likely be my department, will bring some metrics to you on an annual basis to say what kind of LEDA funding came in through the LEDA Logart tax, how was it distributed, how many applications, et cetera. And the intention behind that annual reporting is that this LEDA plan is a fluid document. It's a living document, as we say. And so if you're seeing trends through that annual reporting process that make you want to shift either the funding categories in the plan or the review process, you'll have some real data to be able to do that. So it's just a tool to help you make good decisions moving into the future. With that, that summarizes the changes since last month, and I can stand for any questions.
All right, we have any questions? We'll go with Trustee Rana.
Mayor,
Yes,
I apologize.
do you
We
have
do have someone to speak on this item. Would you like to hear him
Yeah,
first?
I'm sorry, let's go to the public first, I apologize, and then we'll go, let's have your comments. Go ahead.
Mr. Vincent Sanchez, if you would, please approach the podium. State your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Vincent Sanchez, 6802 Rio Grande. This resolution represents a meaningful step forward in the village of Los Ranchos. It provides a thoughtful framework and sustainable economic growth that represents our unique rural, semi-rural identity. With proper oversight, it will protect public resources while helping us attract and retain business, incentivize local residents to create businesses that have new jobs, which enhance the community's vitality. I appreciate the built-in safeguards and the emphasis on measurable public benefits. To further strengthen accountability and long-term impact, I recommend including a version of the following plan or implementation guidelines. Any unused LIDA funds at the end of each project cycle should be returned to a dedicated LIDA fund pool. The returned funds could be earmarked until they reach an agreed-upon threshold for an extra future project funded by the previous beneficiaries. A consideration given to the fiscally responsible business or project that demonstrates prudent use of resources. This approach delivers multiple benefits. It rewards careful stewardship and sends a powerful message that money comes from local taxpayers and businesses, not from government. It shows that one business's responsible management can directly help another business grow. It encourages prudent, needs-based spending instead of rushed, low-priority expenditures just to avoid losing funds. It builds greater trust with residents and voters by demonstrating fiscal responsibility. It creates a growing reserve that lets the village respond more effectively to emerging opportunities. This use it wisely or return it mechanism turns potential waste into a virtuous cycle of reinvestment, delivering compounding benefits for our entire community over time. I urge the board to seriously consider incentivizing unused funds as a provision. It would make our economic development efforts more efficient and accountable, as well as a direct-to-business community, not just a passive tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. And with that, that concludes public comment on this item of business.
Okay, very good. Before we go to Trustee Randall, let me just ask, were you able, I think Vince made a couple of really good points. Can you respond to some of those and see what we can do?
Yeah, Mayor Royale, I agree that there should be some provision for taking funds back and putting them back into the LIDA pot. The way that the plan situates that now is that those parameters are a part of the project participation agreement. The LIDA plan itself is supposed to be kind of a high-level framework that helps guide each project participation agreement. And in my opinion, it's more appropriate for those kind of clawback provisions to be in each PPA, because every project is going to be so unique that the clawback provision is likely going to need to be tailored per project. So I do think, and those provisions are located on around page 18 of the plan, that is in here. It's just not explicitly spelled out, and it leaves it to the PPA, which each of those has to come before this board for approval.
Okay, that makes some sense. It might be worthwhile if in that PPA section, is there actually language that would say funds not expended will be or expenditure of funds will be monitored through the PPA or something, just so that.
Maybe the most explicit it gets is it says that every PPA has to have a remedy section, which shall include provisions for repayment or clawback if the qualifying entity fails to deliver on its commitments.
Okay, that's great. I think that covers, but that was a good point. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, we'll go down to Trustee Ryan.
Yeah, that comment sort of goes along with the question I had.
Okay.
In terms of the microloans then, is the village going to be the fiscal agent, or is it going to be some outside entity that would actually be controlling that money?
Mayor Royale, Trustee Rhino, my understanding is that the village would be acting as the fiscal agent.
Okay. So that would be done internally, totally internally?
Mayor Royale, Trustee Rhino, correct.
Okay. I guess the other major question that I had is that the language throughout tends to focus on the purpose of the plan is to reinvest in existing businesses. Question I have is, as we hopefully attract new business to the village, they're not existing. They're going to be new businesses, going to be future businesses. So is that part, is the catalytic economic development project a part of what the intention was there?
Mayor Rael, Trustee Rhino, you're right, there's a focus in the plan on the language of existing businesses, but there is nothing prohibitive in any of these enabling documents that would not stop kind of a new to market business from coming into the village. I think the kind of policy preference was there is a focus that we should have, and that should be building up the existing community, but there's nothing in here that would compel us to say no to a new business if it were to come seek LIDA funds through us.
And I'm just thinking about an opportunity then to market what kind of advantage someone has in coming here as opposed to going to somewhere else. So could be a resident or it could be a non-resident that has a business idea, and they want to open up a store. Okay, and I think that it's not existing, but something that we need to support.
Mayor Rael, Trustee Rhino, that would be allowed under the way the plan is currently drafted. There is the local residency bonus that I discussed that gives a bit of a platform to local folks, but it doesn't necessarily take away points from someone who's not already in the village.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Trustee Edwards.
A philosophical one, and I appreciate you including the local bonus point system. I talked about that with a friend of mine, and he says, so are you precluding yourself from a project that might be of a higher quality only because somebody is local? And I thought that was pretty provocative, and I thought to myself, well, what can we do to maintain the local bonus, but also, not making ourselves available to a high quality project? And to the extent that that's the case, would a tiebreaker in the local bonus be a consideration? Maybe that 10 is divided in two parts. You get a 5% local bonus, and then if there is a tie between two companies getting money, then there's a tiebreaker or something. I don't know how you guys feel about this. I mean, a lot of times people, if we can be too provincial, and if we're too provincial, we don't get the quality that we're seeking.
I think what we should do is put a rock, paper, scissors thing. Look, well, go ahead, Shanna, what's your thoughts?
Mayor Rael, Trustee Edward, I think what's worth noting is that the points are just guidance.
Okay.
There's nothing in here that says just because someone scored a 98 that they will be awarded a project over someone who scored a score of 93, for example. Those awards still have to come before this board, and if there was a good subjective reason to award a lower scoring project the funds, staff and the committee would need to justify that, but that's extremely reasonable.
Okay. And then another question I had is some degree of balance. I mean, is it written in such a way that if the village wanted to commandeer all the money one year, they could?
Mayor Rael, Trustee Edward, yes. There is so the funding categories have been split up to say you're gonna spend only 40% on these types of projects, only 40% on these, but there's a bit of a relief valve in that if there is a project so catalytic to the village that it would be worthwhile for the village to take all the money that year and put it into that project, the plan allows for that. That would have to be highly justified, and this board would have to agree with that as the folks who have formal and final oversight, but that is contemplated, yes.
I think that's a good thing, but also I wouldn't want it to happen multiple years in a row because I think it would erode the trust that this is to help local businesses or the private sector. I don't know if there's a balancing act in there somewhere, that if we did commandeer all the funds in one year that you'd have to fund private projects the following year or something like that.
Well, I think
don't know
one
how
of the
people
things.
feel about that.
I'm sorry, trustee Edwards, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think one of the things that's interesting is that we're not gonna be able to cover every single sort of anomaly.
Yeah.
But I think where it really does point to what Shanna said, and one of the things that I was gonna make a comment in closing in this issue, unlike a lot of other things the village does, where you all give the mayor and the administration some authority to do some things, in this particular use of these funds, it's a lot more prescriptive as it relates to the oversight of the board in terms of how the funds are gonna be allocated. So if it did have an issue, and maybe we're not here, other trustees and other mayors, but where they did take the money for a major catalytic project, they are the elected representatives, right? So they're gonna have to make that decision the next budget year as to why they're gonna have all the businesses in town sitting here around you, why you guys take all our money? So I do think that is a little bit, the only way I can sort of say is that I think it does leave it up to the elected officials to make that call. But that's why we set the process the way we did in the outline of the plan, so that if you make the call, you got to make that consciously and in front of the whole community.
Yeah.
Because the plan right now tells you this is how you're going to do it.
Okay.
And I think is sort of the important part of democracy, and that we get to make that choice. But by the same token, we have to face the heat if we make the choices that.
No, that's a great way to look at it. And then the only other question is, to what degree do the committee members, are they bound by aspects of conflict of interest, disclosures and things like that?
Mayor Rael, Trustee Edward, that's not necessarily described in this plan itself, but I think administratively, as this body is choosing to appoint folks to this committee, that can be a part of our administrative process to provide conflict of interest forms for each of those folks before they start serving and making decisions about public funds.
I think we should have something written in there about conflict of interest, and that has to be disclosed upon the review of each application.
Can we put that in some language in there that the committee members would have to, in order to be appointed, would have to have signed conflict of interest statements?
Mayor Rael, yes, there's a section in the plan that's called Review Committee that talks about who's appointed and how. I can add some language related to conflict of interest forms for each of those committee members.
Mr. Mayor, and just to follow up on that, I think there's a difference between overall conflict of interest and a particular project that comes up. And if it's a particular project that, my cousin is involved in but wasn't coming up before then, I need to step back on that project. I wouldn't necessarily need to step back from everything.
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right, anything else? With that, Trustee Rana.
As an example, in terms of if you have a project that is village initiated, could that potentially include a public safety program along 4th Street?
Mayor Rael, Trustee Rhino, LEDA funds, yeah, I suppose so. LEDA funds have to be justified, one, by job creation, and so if that program would create jobs, certainly. Yes, I think that falls within could fall within the realm of what LEDA funds are intended to be used for.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if we have no other questions, then we are going to a motion to adopt the resolution. Do we have a motion to adopt the resolution?
Mr. Mayor, I move adoption of resolution number 2026-05-01, a plan for the administration and use of the Local Economic Development Act funds.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any other discussion?
Do we add a condition or an amendment stating that the conflict of interest will be included in that?
We're taking, we can do that if you'd like, or we can rely on Shanna to ensure that it gets inserted. But,
Administratively.
yeah. Would you feel comfortable if you added an amendment to that?
Yeah, if we just have some amendment that addresses that, and I'm not real great with language, so if somebody wants to help me out, I'm more than willing to accept it.
You made the motion.
I can modify the motion to say, to add to the end, including the discussion related to conflict of interest
Provision.
provision.
Okay.
Perfect.
I would agree.
You agree with that? All right, we have a motion with an amendment. All those in favor of the motion signify, whoops, you have to be a roll call, isn't it, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Trustee Baldwin?
Aye.
Trustee Edward?
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Rhino?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Very good, thank you all. This has been a lot of work, and I think this is a real milestone for the village. Good job.
Good job.
Good job, everybody. Good job. All right, we're gonna move now to item 8, approval of the mayor as the voting delegate for the New Mexico Municipal League in 2026 annual conference to be held August 25th to 28th, 2026 in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and naming the alternate as trustee Gwen Baldwin or trustee John Edward. This is simply a requirement that the Municipal League has in order for to vote on the policy matters that are going to be presented to the legislature. We have a vote as a municipality. I think at this point, Trustee Edward and Trustee Baldwin and myself are attending the conference. And so I don't, Trustee Ryan and Trustee Kiefer, you all, I think, don't have, are not going at this time. So this really is in case I decide to go do something else, or if I'm called back to Albuquerque or what have you, that one of you will be the alternates. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Mary, yes.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the designation of the delegates.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of you, the mayor, as voting delegate for the 2026 New Mexico Municipal League Annual Conference to be held August 25th through 28th, 2026 in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and name trustee John Edward as the alternate.
Okay. Any, we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, we're good. All right, we'll move to item number 8, resolution adopting fourth quarter financial report for 25-26. Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. Tonight, I'm presenting the resolution approving the fourth quarter budget for the fiscal year ending at June 30th, 2026. The final budget review for the fiscal year reflects a favorable outcome for the general fund. General fund revenues exceeded budget projections by approximately $847,000. At the same time, expenditures came at approximately $765,000 under budget. Looking at all village funds combined, operations concluded the fiscal year with an overall excess of revenues over expenditures of approximately $755,000. As a result of these favorable year-end outcomes, the village's ending cash balance stands at a little over $15 million. I stand for any questions.
Any questions of Ms. Rodriguez? If not, we need a motion to approve the fourth quarter financial report.
I have a couple.
Oh,
I just have a couple questions.
All right.
Sorry to do that to you guys, but let me get to my notes. Can you remind me, in order to get to that, this is the projected budget, correct?
This is the fourth quarter budget for the fiscal year of 2026, so the one that we just completed.
Okay, all right. I think I'm fine then. Yeah.
All right. All those, we need a motion to approve the fourth quarter financial report.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the resolution number 2026-07-01, approving the fourth quarter financial report for fiscal year 2025-2026.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report signify.
Mayor,
Oh, we
this
gotta
is
do
a roll call.
Oh, man, it's the report.
Sorry.
That's another vote.
All right, let's do the roll call.
Trustee Baldwin?
Yes.
Trustee Edward?
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Rhino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor,
right.
the remainder of the
The remainder of the
resolutions will be.
I'm gonna do it my way. You got it. All right, let's move on to item, next item is the resolution 2026-07-02, a resolution approving the budget approving budget adoption for fiscal year 2026/2027. Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. Before you is a resolution approving the budget for fiscal year 2027. This budget includes a 3% cost of living adjustment for employees, increased village contributions towards health insurance, and funding for several key positions, including a planner, transportation manager, and an in-house attorney. It also invests nearly $1.9 million in capital projects and community improvements, including building upgrades, technology enhancements, and recreational facility improvements. Even with these investments, the village remains in a strong position with a projected ending cash balance of $13.5 million, including $9.2 million in the general fund. I stand for any questions.
All right, this is the adoption. As you'll recall, back a month ago, we adopted the preliminary budget that is required by the state, and now this, at the end of July, this will be the adopted budget that will be submitted to DFA. So that's why it's a bit of a two-step process for us at the local level. But anyway, I do believe that Trustee Edwards had some questions on this particular item.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Can you talk about some of the contingency funds that we have set aside, and we have those as a buffer? And if you've kind of strategized out into the future, what you anticipate 3 likely hiccups could happen in order to challenge and dip into those contingency funds?
Thank you, Trustee Edward. So yes, some of the potential items that could happen is a lot of these forecasts are based on historical projections. So GRT, let's say 4th Street was closed and we didn't generate as much revenue. We do have a healthy reserve. We do have over a year's worth of operation in the reserve at this point. Another factor would be grants. So let's say we don't get the anticipated grants because a couple of these are going to be provided by Administrator Villa over a couple of new fiscal year 27 grants. Let's see. But other than that, I would say that the revenue projections that we did this year did increase compared to last year, but as you can see with the 4th quarter budget review, we did go over $800,000. So I was pretty confident that the projections that we have are pretty conservative. And in case of an emergency, we do have a significant amount in the reserve.
Okay. And then when you come up with these revenue projections, do you anticipate, as a team, do you talk about potential building permits that are going to be issued and the construction receipts that go with those, or does that come part of your forecasting?
So yes, Trustee Edward, we do speak with the departments, the administrator and the mayor. We do look at the last 3 years of projections, and we also include the last year's budget as to not skew too much from year to year. So even though we might, have a lot more projected in the year, we always try to say pretty similar to what was budgeted in the past.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, any other questions? No other questions? All right. Madam Clerk, we need a motion to approve.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 2026-07-02, approving the budget adoption for fiscal year 2026-2027.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll go to the clerk for the roll.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor,
Trustee.
I'm sorry.
Discussion of the
would you
motion.
like? Okay.
Just quickly, I just want to give huge kudos, not only to you, Anna, but the entire staff. It takes literally everybody in this building, plus some, to make a thoughtful budget. This is your first time doing it together, and I just very much appreciate the effort that has gone into this, as well as, Mr. Mayor, the thoughtful investments on the capital side. I'm so excited about what is being proposed for this budget, and I can't wait to see it happen.
Great, thank you very much. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Trustee Baldwin?
Aye.
Trustee Edward?
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Reinau?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Very good. We're now item D, a resolution number 2026-07-03, a resolution amending a policy for the use of village facilities, properties for events, including an update to the rental fee schedule. Mr. Avila and Ms. Callahan will make a presentation. I'll go to, first of all, to Erin.
Thank you, Mayor Rael, trustees. I will briefly note to John Avila, just let me know when you need to jump in on this one. I am prepared to present about the village, the barn rentals overall, but happy to also stand aside. So the resolution that you have before you this evening contemplates updates to the village's facility rental fees for several reasons, one of which is as facilities are utilized, the last time that we updated fees was in 2025, in order to stay current with usage and appropriate rates to ensure we're getting the best, we're bringing in the kind of business that we desire, but also charging a competitive fee, and then it's good to always evaluate these things. The recently passed Ordinance 410 allows alcohol to be served at private events. So the trustees, if I recall from current meetings, have encouraged us to evaluate our facility rental procedures to say, now that our policies are probably making our facilities a bit more desirable to rent, then do we need to reevaluate our procedures now that we allow alcohol? And finally, and the reason that I'm before you this evening presenting this is that I threw like tons of hiccups into the discussion process for the facility rentals, just evaluating our procedures for rentals at the Agri-Nature Center. So after being at Agri-Nature Center for several months and just observing how the facility is reused, what kind of requests we get to actually rent out the facility, and how easy it is to accommodate those, with the resolution table and the fee table that is currently approved, I had a lot of feedback on that and how I think that we might actually bring in more great workshops and events with some changes. So all of those things into consideration, on the mayor's direction, staff has been meeting for several months to evaluate these procedures. And I will note that on the village overall rental side, with a tremendous amount of work by Shanna, so thank you to Shanna for really coordinating and spearheading this effort, getting off the ground. Since I was working on the resolution anyways to try to specifically update the Ag Center fees then, I am just up here to talk about that, but a lot of the work went into evaluating that with Director Schultz. So the resolution before, the current resolution really just, this amends Resolution 2025-03-01, and that adopts the fee schedule for village fees. This is really just an amendment to that schedule. So the whereas statements in the preamble are quite a bit longer, but they really just set the stage to say we're proposing an update to the fee table as it's adopted. In addition, we are also currently evaluating our rental procedures to make sure that we have proper agreements, that we're asking for proper insurance coverage, especially if we're allowing alcohol. So there is quite a lot of administrative work in the background, but what's actually adopted by resolution is the fee table. The current fee table as it is adopted has a number of different items on it, includes everything within the village that could be rented, including facilities that we routinely rent. So the barn, the Alfredo Garcia barn, Hardnett Park, parking lot, the overflow parking lot, those are routinely utilized and they are rented at the fees as they're adopted. There are other items in the table where we've clearly anticipated that one day there would be fees charged, like renting the Anderson House or leasing certain fields for a year. And they don't have rates set. So they're set, it notes that it would be market rate or it's blank. So we've kind of hold space for it, but we don't have anything adopted. For those, we're just essentially proposing to remove those. We can always come back and update a resolution anytime when we've determined how we want to address those items. but it's not necessarily helping us to have the kind of blank space or market note within the table. And then we also have items where we are, and so Ag Center in particular has a number of items where many of which are just not really a full facility rental. When you rent the barn, you get use of, we kind of turn it over to you and you get the barn. When you rent the classroom at the Ag Center, we don't really turn anything over to you. We have to be there as staff. We've got tons of equipment in the facility. You're really just coming in, you're using it for a period of time, similar to how you might use a room at a rec center. But our fee table, as it is currently adopted, does not really reflect this. So we have a daily rate, for example, for non-residents of $800 a day for the classroom with the demonstration kitchen. This is just not in demand. So I get a number of people who do come before me and say, how do I would like to come in and teach, for example, permaculture classes or pizza making or something similar where they might be in for an hour or two. They really don't intend to charge a high fee, and $800 a day is too much time, and it's cost prohibitive. And so it actually encouraged us to kind of drive programs away because we can't get them in. What happens when we do get programs in is we have to go into kind of a contractual agreement that says, this is how you're our program partner and you do this to support us, and so we do this to support you, and we kind of adopt everything as our own program. It takes a lot of work, which we don't always have time to do the paperwork to make those agreements happen. So essentially, we would really like to eliminate everything except for what's basically the entire facility rental for the Ag Center, which would be what would happen if someone wanted to rent it for a festival. This is a festival rental. At this point, we would have to close. Somebody else takes it over for a festival. That is a true rental. Everything else that's in the table, such as classroom with parking lot or parking lots A and B, by the way, I don't know which parking lots those are. They are not mapped. So everything else in there, we stay open. This is a different type of, hopefully an administrative, hourly rate that we could charge just to bring in some quality programs without there being a resolution that implies that we're, that's actually not what we're supposed to be doing. So what you'll see in this proposed resolution is a very abridged table that eliminates things where we just don't know yet what we want to do with, like the Anderson House. It eliminates everything for the Agri-Nature Center except for the entire facility, which would be for a festival. And then it keeps the Alfredo Garcia Community Barn, which includes the parking lot. It does raise those fees in understanding that we're probably going to see a lot more demand for that facility now that there is private event alcohol use. And we think that it's commensurate with other facilities that, it's a desirable facility for people to rent. So we think that the rates would better reflect the market on that. The parking lot and the Hartnett Park parking lot, those rates are remaining the same. We're just keeping those on the table because those are facilities that are used. And with that, so I apologize. Y'all haven't had to deal with me too much at trustees or council meetings, but I can be long-winded. Many apologies. I will stand for questions.
Any questions on this issue? I think one of the things that just bears repeating is there are user fees for using smaller facilities, and I think what especially with the Agri-Nature Center, as Aaron just described, a standard fee to rent the whole place is one thing, but to rent something for an hour, for two, maybe for half an hour, or for half a day, we could have a whole long list of categories here that boxes in basically the director, and then she can't put two and two together to try and get an event there. So I think this gives us the flexibility that we need to be able to accommodate sort of the uses of the facility, what I would call one-offs, but then also structures that the overall use of the bigger facility as a whole is such that it does generate the revenue that we want to generate. And quite frankly, I mean, I will tell you, I don't know so far, I've been your mayor for about a little over a year and a half. I have yet to have someone come in and want to rent the entire facility.
Yeah.
So, but I do think we have to make that provision just simply because we could. And so this is designed, that's one thing. And then the second thing is that I want to make sure that we're clear also, the alcohol is an attractive portion of what we offer, but it's also a bit of a liability issue for us as well. So the fees that are here include things that you all may not always think about, because I certainly didn't until we started going down the path. Segmenting, for example, at the Alfredo Garcia barn and putting in a fence around the area of the barn so that you don't have people walking around with a beer can all over the park, where you have to have requirements per the state law so that the use of the facility is confined. So this captures the cost of the setup and takedown of a portable fence that we will have around the facility. This also takes into consideration the bathrooms that right now we don't have in the facility, and people have to bring in those bathrooms and connect them to the sewer system, et cetera. So the idea here was to ensure that we are capturing some of our operating costs and et cetera, so that when we get people coming in to use the facility, they're getting the, if you will, the full costs of the program. What we don't include in here, just so you all know, we don't have, for example, tables and chairs. These are brought in by event folks. You know, we don't have we don't have any of the dishes and any of that stuff that you do. Those are all brought in by a third party to include the bathrooms. So there's some things that we don't have here yet, and I don't know that we want to go there yet. But my point is this: I think covers our needs, and as we go through this, we may come back, 6 or 8 months from now and say, hey, we underestimated a piece here, et cetera. And so we think that they're commensurate with what the community has invested in terms of their tax, which is why we have a rate for residents that's much more, if you will, competitive. The non-residents are really a fee that is really commensurate with what you would rent something at the convention center or some area at one of the major facilities in town that actually serves alcohol and does the same things we're doing. So with that was the whole thought behind this structure. So with that, is there any questions from any of the trustees? Trustee Kiefer.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Aaron, for the presentation. I understand what we're trying to do. I get it, and I think we've always really underestimated some of our rates, which is why the 2025 adoption was done to increase those. I would have, and where I don't feel comfortable at this exact moment is I don't have a comparison of what we're eliminating. All I see is what we're keeping, but in my mind, I don't know what we're eliminating outside of you verbally telling me, which is a lot of information. And so I went online to look, and I'm not seeing the resolution out there to even be able to do it at this exact moment to do a comparison. The other thing that I would add is if everything else we're kind of doing at an hourly rate, why don't we add the hourly rate to this table? To say, hey, a resident hourly rate is this much, a non-resident hourly rate is this much, and at least that is identified at this point in time, and it's the discretion of the directors of each of the facilities to use their discretion as to whether it's a hourly rental or whether it's a full day rental, depending on the needs of that particular event.
Okay.
Mayor Rael, Trustee Kiefer. Director Schultz is going to pull up the current resolution as it's passed, and I apologize, that's my oversight in putting the packet together with the supporting materials. I did I will just note from a user perspective, I did kind of intentionally not put both in the table because the way the current resolution actually reads is the current rates are labeled as proposed rates, which does get a little bit confusing to make sure that you're reading the right rates. So my hope is that if at such time the resolution is passed, then we'll just have the rates as they're approved. But I should have provided clearer guidance there. Regarding the hourly rates, we actually don't rent anything out hourly right now. Everything is a daily rate that we're renting out. And after quite a bit of discussion amongst the staff and the mayor, we've decided that what really belongs in this table are that kind of a full facility rental where we would just want to keep it to a daily rate. At the point where someone's having a festival, we're not going to get into, is it a 4-hour festival, is it a 6-hour festival? We're closed once that happens. So it's yours for the day. Similarly to the barn, we're not renting that out by the hour. It is a daily rate. What we are discussing is a set of administrative rules to make sure that for these kind of lower stakes questions, like how much is reasonable for an hourly rental of the outdoor kitchen space. For example, that would allow you to, use the grill and sit down at the picnic tables. That as we remain open, when somebody is there, our operations continue. It would likely be a very low rate that probably does not rise to the level of needing to be in a resolution that's passed publicly, but would likely be just a very small fee for somebody to come in and say, hey, you got kind of a group shelter here, you can reserve this space. So nothing in here, there are not currently hourly rates, and we are not proposing to add any hourly rates by resolution.
Okay, thank you. So to make sure I understand, if I wanted to use the classroom at the Ag Center.
Yes.
It's during Monday through Friday business operation, I could do that for free?
No. So currently now, under the existing resolution, if you wanted to come in and use the classroom at the Ag Center, and we said, you said, I just want to use it for whatever is the current rate, you could rent it for the day for $800 for whatever, whatever then your class is. So if that's an 8-hour class, if it's a 1-hour class, it's an $800 rate. What we're proposing, and again, we're open, so you're talking about you want to come in, you want to use the classroom for a day, it doesn't change any of our work. So that classroom is—
What you said was cost prohibitive, correct?
It's cost, when we let people know that, they say, I can't charge a fee for my participants enough to cover that cost.
Sure.
And for really just in observing the use of the Ag Center during the day, unless we have Explora Farm Camp, who does pay a weekly fee, no one is in the classroom. So really, we're not using the classroom. We're operating elsewhere. Nobody's in the kitchen, using the kitchen during the week. So from my perspective, it makes sense to have some flexibility in establishing some kind of a way to just get people in for an hourly rate for small fee. Again, but in discussing with the committee, that would not be the full facility rental, which is what this table covers. So if that—
No, I understand
This was a complicated conversation, so I understand because it took me a long time to get here as well.
Well, and I understand, but in order to remedy the cost prohibitiveness of using just a classroom, it sounds like we need an hourly rate. So my suggestion is, why aren't we adding an hourly rate into this new proposed resolution so that we have that, so that when someone comes in and wants to use the classroom, they know what that amount is and are able to use it. Because otherwise, if we pass it, in my opinion, the way I'm understanding this, if we pass it as is, this is giving, it's silent on the classroom or use of a classroom out, because we're essentially repealing what it currently is now, which is $800, and what we've already said is cost prohibitive. So if we're silent on that, and someone comes in after we pass this and says, I want to use the classroom for an hour, who's determining that amount? Because it can't be free, then we go against the anti-donation clause. Because we've run into that as a village before. So my thought is, why aren't we adding that?
So I think the question that you're really getting at is, and this may not sound like what you're saying, but this is what we're getting at. Do we want to micromanage the village use of these facilities to that degree? Is really the question. Do you want, we are talking about renting a classroom as a user fee, so that if she comes in and let's say it's the Explora folks who want to use a classroom, and the classroom is available and she charges $150 as a user fee, it would be the cost of just the use of the room. It doesn't, right now, it's all prescriptive. And so if you want to set an hourly rate for use of the facilities, we could certainly do that, but what happens if a facility is not the entire facility? Do you want to do an hourly rate for the use of the, for example, of the outdoor kitchen? Do we want to do a hourly rate for the use of the gardens, of the parking lot?
No, I'm thinking an hourly rate for anything that's not a full facility, right? So here's our facility use, or if it doesn't have a full facility and it's hourly, I'm making up numbers here, but let's say $200 an hour or $100 if you're a resident. And that's regardless of what facility. And the reason is because how do we then, let's say I go in and I say I want to do this, and Erin says, okay, great, it's $150. And Trustee Baldwin goes in and she gets a $50 rate. And then Trustee Baldwin and I are talking, and then it's, how did you get 150? They charged me 50, and now we've got an allegation of unfair treatment.
So the way those are handled typically is through an administrative structure that the administrator would set up a rate administratively for the use of those that aren't necessarily approved by the board, but they're administratively monitored so that everyone is treated equally with an administrative user fee. If you all want to have that rate here, then we would probably need to come back with a supplemental, if you will, chart that shows what the rate is. I wouldn't know what the hourly rate is for use of a parking lot versus the use of the outdoor kitchen versus a classroom versus what all the other issues that are listed in here. So the idea here was just to clarify and to give a general rate for the bigger facilities, and then give the administrator the ability to issue a directive as to what others facilities would be based on the cost of keeping the doors open and the staff that's required to manage them. That was the intent here.
Okay.
So if we want to do an hourly rate, I think we probably ought to, one of my suggestions might be is, if you all would consider this, is approve this for the overall and have us come back with a second chart that talks about an hourly rate that the administrator then can use for the purposes of the specific little areas within the Ag Center, and quite frankly, even within the barn. I mean,
What about Old Village Hall? Are we not?
well, Old Village Hall is not quite ready for prime time, but that will be probably presented to you all, including the North Open Space, probably here in January.
Okay. And Trustee Kiefer, I mean, I totally agree with you that we have to be consistent. That would be really bad blood out there. But I think about Old Village Hall, and we've heard a number of people say, hey, there's no place for a neighborhood association to meet easily, or HOA in the village. And, you know, that could be a place that's great, but I don't know that it would have the same hourly value as a classroom where you could be charging people to come, right?
Sure.
So that's where I think it could get tricky, but I think what we are getting at is the right thing, which is there are uses that are going to be short term.
Sure.
And we should be thinking about how we can make that happen.
Okay, this is a good discussion. Mr. Chappell's been waiting.
Yeah, Mayor, I would like to interject. I think the way to get where you want to go is this. Ordinance 310 requires that the rates be set by resolution of the Board of Trustees. Resolution 310 does give the mayor the authority to set administrative rules and that kind of thing. I would suggest a simple amendment to Ordinance 310 that says the board creates the fees for daily use of an entire facility, and that you include the ability for the mayor to administratively set rules as to uses for less than full days using of a full facility. And then I think that puts it in the administrative realm that the mayor can adopt and adopt those fees.
Go ahead, Trustee Edwards.
Again, I ask these questions out of my own ignorance, but have we rented many of these facilities year to date at all?
Yes, we rent the Alfredo Garcia barn gets rented mostly in the fall and the spring because it doesn't have heating and air conditioning, so the winter doesn't get used very much. And in the summer, as the heat of the summer, it's rarely used. But yeah, we rent it. That's probably the one that that rents the most. I would say, John, if you can give me some perspective, probably get 10 to 15 rentals a year, maybe. Is that high? Or is that low?
Mariel, Board of Trustees. I would say that it's on a bi-weekly basis when it's really renting out. October is going to be full. Everybody's going to be wanting to rent that. So it depends on the month.
I'm talking about historically.
No, that's what I'm saying. Seasonally, that would load up, but yeah, so like a bi-weekly, you'd get a rental every 2 weeks.
So, I kind of go into this from a market perspective, and that is, for some of these spaces, we would probably like to rent them out as often as we can, and there's other spaces where if we have vacancy, it's probably to our advantage. And for me, I would want us to charge a rate that is going to fulfill a goal of occupancy. So if we have an expectation of 100% occupancy, then you're going to have to set a low rate, and the expectation is that we get it so filled up that then we can easily raise our rates in the future because people want it, they know about it, it's exposed, and it's a quantity that can be used. The other side of it is that maybe we don't want to have it and we want to be more opportunistic and we set higher rates. I would just like to say, because we don't know that and we're not in this business as our primary core business, I think we should have it in here that we revisit these rates every year and we have some sort of an occupancy. And we determine these rates based upon those occupancies and experiences. We're talking about an hourly rate. I mean, honestly, I think some of these places, you don't rent them until they have at least a minimum of 3 hours or 2 hours worth of use. I mean, the administrative work of getting this stuff done, we're losing money. And the property is being deteriorated at too great of a rate. I'd like us to go about this from a market rate perspective. I think that we need to charge a fair rate. I don't want to micromanage the process. I want to give the negotiators some latitude, and they should have latitude, especially if the place is not getting rented out. And I'm sorry to, make this more long-winded than it needs to be, but like for instance, community gardens, $60. I don't think we should charge anything under $100 for anything. But I think that would you say that these are a desired, how many times do we actually get called about these facilities that people even want to use them? Is getting a good rate and getting people in there and experiencing it, it's our own form of marketing, and a year from now, we have a lot more demand and we change our rates, because that's really what ends up happening in the real estate world. Unless we're going to advertise these. Do we advertise these things? What is the expectation, I guess?
I think a lot of folks in the community in the past, and again, keep in mind that this is new territory because we're offering a greater amount of service with the ability to have alcohol in these facilities. In the past, they're utilized, as John said, maybe, a good number of times during the summer, or fall and spring. But I think the other balance between the market rate is also the ability for the community to use the facilities. If we are charging so much or such a high rate, then what happens when the artisan group wants to use one of the facilities and we don't want to charge them because they're a community group, or the farmer's market wanting to use that and we're charging a rate that's higher than they actually make with. So we're trying to walk a balance between a community service that we want folks to use and the ability for us to cover our costs, so that we're not, obviously, we don't want to, I don't know that I would ever look at these facilities as huge money makers for the village. I would love to see them utilized because they're good for the community, and if we can break even for the utilization, I think that's actually a good thing. Because keep in mind, these people are also the same people that are paying the taxes that got us these facilities in the first place.
Yeah.
So I feel, I understand your thought about the market rate, and I think that there's some logic for that. I also want to make sure that we don't put the market rate in such a place that the locals in particular and the small groups that we want to have don't get a chance to use the facilities. So let me ask you all this as it relates to, because I think we're talking two different things here, and Trustee Kiefer, you've raised some good points. May I suggest the following? The legislation before you is really can be categorized as the rental of the entire facilities. Are you all okay with those numbers? The small stuff that we are not including in here, we can come back with a subsequent resolution if we have to, or even with the policy that I'm allowed to promulgate to describe an hourly rate, for example, for use of some of the other facilities, just so that way you have a sense that we have a level playing field.
I think we just need to close the loop.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And it's also going to be really clear, we were going to have an agri-nature center master plan that may bring up, Anderson House in a different way. We're going to have things that get built out, and then it will change the conversation. So I expect we will be coming back regularly.
So with that, let me suggest then, if we could pass this tonight, we're going to come back anyway, because we fully expect that with the creek don't rise, as they say, that we'll have Old Village Hall by January. We'll have a little better numbers on Del Norte open space. So this gives us 6 months to test this, to see how we do, and we'll come back and bring a little bit more of a detail. But I do appreciate the conversation. I understand the desire to make sure that we have some structure so that people are treated equally as it relates to the use of the facilities. So with that, if you all would consider entertaining a motion for approval.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 2026-0703, a resolution amending a policy for the use of village facilities and property for events, including an update to the rental fee schedule. And I would like to continue and say for renting entire facilities, and allow the mayor to set the fee rate for uses less than a full day or an hourly use.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so in a second. Any other conversation?
I'd like us to revisit this, get some experience in our belt. I don't want to delay and keep people from not being able to use it. I mean, there were some people who came in early this year. They were so excited.
Yep.
I don't want to blow up their dream.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other comments? All right, all those, oops, we're going to go to is this a resolution, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. Trustee Baldwin.
Aye.
Trustee Edward.
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer.
Yes.
Trustee Rynell.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, good discussion. I appreciate the work. Resolution number 2026-07-04, a resolution approving the participation in capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation for Osuna Road Northwest improvements. Let me sort of and John's going to go through these, but the next resolutions are really an opportunity. We are in the process right now of getting the process from the DOT and the State Department of Finance for all the capital outlay funds that we received. But in order to get those capital outlay funds, we have to have a resolution from the governing body that accepts those capital outlay funds. Then these resolutions are included as part of the packet so that we can get those funds released from the state. So in order to get ahead of the ball game and get those done quickly, that's why these are all on the agenda tonight. So these are state funds that we're going to receive, but we need to have this resolutions to approve them. Is that correct, John?
Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees, that's correct. We do need a resolution allowing the mayor to sign those agreements and the village accept those funds. Mr. Mayor, I had a question. Do you want me to have a vote on each one of these resolutions or the whole?
Let's vote on each one since that's the way they're listed in the packet.
Okay.
So, Madam Clerk, actually, we need a motion to approve this resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 2026-0704, approving the participation in the capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation related to Osuna Road Northwest improvements.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Any other discussion?
What is this one for?
Okay, go ahead, John.
This is for improvements on Osuna between 2nd and 4th Street. It'll, at $100,000, you're not going to rebuild everything. It'll be mostly design and preparation for further improvements.
Is this kind of the median work that we're
This one's
having
actually,
done, or?
no, that
what do we-
one, this is actually a resolution, appropriation by Representative DeHockman DeHill to help us do a design of the intersection of Osuna and 4th.
Okay.
It's $100,000. Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, do you call the roll?
Thank you. Trustee Baldwin?
Aye.
Trustee Edward?
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Rhino?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, item F, Resolution 2026-07-05, a resolution approving the participation in the capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation for the Del Norte sound barriers. This was an appropriation by, again, Senator Duhigg and Representative DeHockman Vihill for $500,000 to begin to do some work on, with the DOT on possible, if you will, improvements to the berms along Paseo del Norte to hopefully eventually get to a point of getting additional funds for sound barrier walls, if you will. This is a $500,000 appropriation. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve resolution number 2026-0704, approving participation in capital outlay administered by DOT for Paseo del Norte sound barrier.
Do we have a second?
Mayor and Trustee Kiefer, I apologize for the interruption. This one is 2026-0705.
I'm sorry, isn't that what I said?
04.
Oh, 05.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved in second. Any additional questions?
The only question I have, Mayor, is I know there was this whole talk of where the study was done and DOT said, well, you don't meet the thresholds for sound barriers. So having the money now, does that mean we can still do something without DOT's blessing?
Well, yes, in many ways, this was the legislators' sort of way of saying to the DOT, this is a priority from the executive and the legislative to have you reconsider your original position and have and do some work on these. So,
great.
Yeah, this is why I think this one's important, because I think it sort of presents to the DOT that this is a policy decision, not necessarily just a department decision.
Great, thank you.
Madam Clerk, to call the roll.
Trustee Baldwin?
Aye.
Trustee Edward?
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Rhino?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Very good. Item G, Resolution 2026-07-06. Resolution approving the participation in the capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Local Government Finance, local government, for the Veterans Memorial. This is $152,000 appropriation by Senator Debbie O'Malley and others, including Representative Senator Linda Lopez, to help begin the process of developing a Veterans Memorial at Harnett Park here in the village of Los Ranchos. And that's what this, the amount is $152,000. So we need a motion to approve this resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 2026-0706, approving participation in the capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Finance Administration Local Government Division for the Veterans Memorial.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, to call the roll.
Thank you. Trustee Baldwin?
Yes.
Trustee Edward?
Yes.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Rhino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much. Item H, Resolution 2026-07-07, a resolution approving participation in the capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Finance Administration, Local Government Division, Village Hall improvements. This is a capital outlay appropriation of $600,000 to the village to provide funds to do some improvements to Village Hall, as in this building and as Old Village Hall. And so the idea here is to have these funds available to do some of the work to finish shoring up Old Village Hall, as you all have seen, and then with some of the excess revenues to do some work here in this building to do some operational improvements so that we can actually have a conference room for a change. So anyway, all of that being said, we need a motion to approve accepting the funds.
Mayor, I make motion to approve 2026-07-07, a resolution participation in the capital outlay program by DFA LGD for Village Hall improvements.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any other discussion?
I just appreciate your optimism that there's going to be extra money.
All right, Madam Clerk.
There's a
call the
smart
roll.
aleck in every crowd.
Trustee Baldwin?
Aye.
Trustee Edward?
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer?
Yes.
Trustee Rhino?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, item I, a resolution -2026-07-08, a resolution approving the capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico DFA, LGD division for funding for the Agri-Nature Center improvements. This one is the $2.5 million that we received from the governor and our two legislators for improvements to the Agri-Nature Center. It's like I said, $2.5 million. It also includes funding in there for some, if you will, maintenance to the Anderson House as well. And so we need a motion to approve the acceptance of these funds.
I move approval of resolution number 2026-07-08, approving participation in the capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Finance Administration Local Government Division for Agri-Nature Center improvements.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the clerk for the roll.
Thank you. Trustee Baldwin?
Aye.
Trustee Edward?
Aye.
Trustee Kiefer?
Oh, yes.
Trustee Rhino?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right. Item J, and thank you all for that. That really gets the ball rolling for us and gets it done quickly. Item J, Ordinance 312, an ordinance amending the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque zoning code, including State Statute 9.2.3, definitions, and State Statute 9.2.22, signs to clarify sign regulations, update clear sight triangle standards, reformat sign standards, and make other related changes. Approval and publish as advertised. So this is an ordinance. So today we are asking for approval to advertise this ordinance, and it will be back on the agenda in August for consideration. And so, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up to speak on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Vincent Sanchez, if you would, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Vincent Sanchez, 6802 Rio Grande. Hi. I'm glad there's a desire to rehash this topic, as it never sat right to me that pole signs were blanket banned. First, because they can be attractive and represent Route 66 nostalgia. Who among us would say the Blake's Lotaburger man sign or the El Camino is inferior to a monument sign? I wouldn't. Second, because an attractive, effective pole sign is less obstructive to the sight triangle of a driveway while providing adequate and in many cases superior visual representation for the business. With visual safety for the drivers and pedestrians being really the most paramount feature, something a pole sign, to me, is better at. And a memorable one is even better still. Lastly, I know that subjective restrictions is incredibly difficult and definitely a quagmire. But can language like pole sign appearance must be in the spirit of Route 66 be used to help define guardrails of the ordinance? With other village sign restrictions on size and brightness, along with image searches similar to classic business pole signs on Route 66, there must be an effective way to achieve the aesthetics desired. Thank you, and I appreciate having 2 out of 3 opportunities to try to be constructive.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, that concludes public comment on this item of business.
Thank you. Ms. Shanna.
Thank you, Trustee Kiefer and Board of Trustee members. I'm bringing before you tonight another iteration of the sign code. Some of you just hashed through a sign code not so long ago, so thank you for your patience in hearing this again. This ordinance does a couple of things. The first and foremost issue that it brought up was this prohibition on pole signs. The department has been administering the new sign code since about November of last year when the BOT adopted it. And it became apparent that there are actually so many pole signs in the village. And while it was the decision of a previous legislative body to prohibit pole signs, the department did some research, which you'll find in your Board of Trustee materials, about just how many pole signs are actually in the village. And the department has actually had to either deny or turn away several applicants who wanted to quite simply just move their existing pole sign, but because pole signs were now illegal, that was not going to be allowed. And so we're re-entering the policy conversation on pole signs to ask the question of this new legislative body, are pole signs actually okay? And I think now we have some evidence to support, which you'll find in the record, the 60 plus images of pole signs in the village to say that pole signs actually are quite characteristic of the village. They are up and down 4 streets as compared to monument signs. So that was kind of the driving factor that the mayor asked me to look at in proposing this change. While the sign code was open, I tinkered a little bit as I mentioned, as I've had to administer this since November. And so there are a couple of substantive changes, but a lot of it is reformatting to make the sign code easier to understand. And so I'll just kind of highlight the changes at a high level. First, there's a change proposed to the clear sight triangle definition. Signs do have an implication for clear sight triangle, and I found our clear sight triangle definition to be extremely deficient. One of the biggest reasons is it really only talks about measuring a clear sight triangle from property lines, but if you think about a large property that maybe has property lines around a large perimeter, but multiple driveways within those property lines, I didn't really have a legal way to measure a clear sight triangle when that driveway was not bounded by a property line. And so I think this is a good and smart change to allow me to measure clear sight triangles when there are not property lines present, and you'll find in the definition I'm really clear about how I will do that. Second, reformatting the commercial and residential sign standards. The sign standards were kind of sprinkled in bullet-pointed text across multiple sections, and I've moved to a table format. So if you are a property owner in a commercial zone district, you can look at this table and understand what your requirements are, if it's a freestanding sign, a pole sign, a temporary sign, etc. I think this is just a smart way to look at the code, and I think it'll make it easier for applicants to understand. The third major change, removing the pole sign prohibition. We just talked about that one. There's a provision about banner signs that I'm proposing to remove. So the Board of Trustees last November said you're not allowed to do banner signs, period. But then there's also a subjective provision that says, well, actually, you can go to the planning director, and depending on the size, the traffic on your roadway, and the purpose of your banner sign, the planning director can actually approve a banner sign for you if you want. I did not appreciate this subjectivity. I've approved one permit under these circumstances. I didn't have any real criteria, so there was not really a way for me to say no to this banner sign. And so there's a proposal to kind of tidy up this idea of banner signs versus temporary signs in a way that is much more objective. And then lastly, there was just some duplicative language across the entire sign code where the same thing was either said 2 or 3 times, or it was said in slightly different ways, so you weren't sure if there was a different policy intention. And so you'll see in the red line version from the Planning and Zoning Commission all of those changes that occurred to remove duplicative or in a couple of cases, just erroneous language. With that, I will stand for any questions.
All right, any questions of Ms. Schultz? Trustee Baldwin.
Question, on page 107, we're talking about general sign regulations. I see that the Planning and Zoning Commission introduced in that clear sight triangle that there is the possibility of having a sign, but it can be no taller than 2 feet. And I'm assuming that is related to the sandwich board signs, which are allowed. Again, that the clear sight creates a height, right? So anything above that would be problematic, anything below that would not.
Mayor Rial, Trustee Baldwin, yes, this is a new provision to the code. The sign code has always said absolutely nothing in the clear sight triangle. The proposal in front of you offers some nuance to say, once we draw that clear sight triangle, as it's been newly defined, you actually can put a sign in that clear sight triangle as long as it's not taller than 2 feet. And the idea behind that is if a car has pulled up to maybe a corner where the clear sight triangle is in effect, they can very clearly still see over a 2-foot sign. And so I think it offers property owners some flexibility. And on the 4th Street corridor where the properties are so small, I think that's important, but it does it in a safe way that maintains pedestrian and vehicular visibility.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Edward.
Yeah, I love the trees we have on 4th Street. And I was talking to one of the businesses along there, and they're like, these trees are starting to interfere with my sign. It's the price of success, I guess. Have people approached you about that?
Mayor Rial, Trustee Edward, I have had one property owner come talk about the trees blocking their sign. They have a pole sign, and so they came in to say, I'd like to move my pole sign because of your trees. And I had to tell them, well, pole signs are illegal, so I can't let you do that.
Will you be able to do it now?
Mayor Rial, Trustee Edward, if these changes are passed as proposed, yes, they would be able to move their sign.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Trustee, right now, I know Trustee Kiefer's got a list, so we'll save the good for last. Trustee Ryan. Go ahead, Trustee.
I just had a question. I mean, I saw in the document that there's a reference to May 19th, 2008. What was the purpose of that? I mean, so signs that were erected prior to are just grandfathered in?
Mayor Rial, Trustee Rhino, yes, any sign that was in existence prior to May, I think you said 19th, 2008, the department considers to be legal and in good standing. We do have some technology via Google Street View where we can get some approximations, but it was the legislative choice at the time. My suspicion is there was a very big sign update at that time, and they wanted to grandfather in everyone at once and say the new rules only applied to everyone moving forward. So there is kind of a blanket grandfathering clause related to that 2008 date, yes.
So then I would take it then that requests for signage then would come through your department, but would it also go through P&Z as well?
Mayor Rial, Trustee Rhino, are you asking about an application for a new sign?
Right, yeah.
Those are administrative. Those are entirely administrative. The Planning and Zoning Commission does not have purview over signage. It's an objective administrative application.
So if someone then wanted to erect a pole sign that they don't have right now, let's say there's a sign on the side of a building, okay? That would be something that would come to you directly, would be handled administratively without having to go through P&Z.
Mayor Rael, Trustee Rhino, that's correct. We would check it for size and placement restrictions, lighting restrictions as dictated by the code, but that is all administrative.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Trustee Kiefer.
The only thing that I want to say is I was part of the previous board that went through this whole exercise. And so I went back to the board meeting when I saw this was on the agenda and said, what happened? And it was the recommendation, Shanna, of eliminating pole signs at that time, because I want to say that you made mention to us that other entities were getting rid of pole signs, right? And so I know there was a lot of conversation on it. And so when I think pole sign, right, I wasn't thinking of the, El Camino, the Dan's Boots and Saddles. I was thinking pole signs like the banner poles that flap, that look, in my opinion, not so permanent. And so I was kind of just going based on recommendations. So I'm glad that we're here. I'm disappointed that what it took to get us here, but I appreciate, Mayor, you bringing this back full circle, because that definitely would not have been, speaking for me personally, my intent to not allow, some of these classic signs that we have to be able to adjust especially based on our trees and our landscaping.
Sure. Well, and just to be fair to you, and I think you and I were the only two that were here at the time. Oh, that's right, Trustee Reynold, that's right, you were here too. I mean, the conversation, I think, got lost in the sense that we were, that I don't think we had a really clear sense of how many actually existed. And I will say, for one, as time always has a good way of educating us and making us smarter. I actually thought that we were going to just grandfather those that were in place, and it wasn't until after several requests that came in that I asked Shanna, well, how come those aren't grandfathered? And she goes, well, because there was no grandfather. I said, well, was there a granddaughter or grandma? Anyway, long and the short is that I think we are better for the error of our ways, and we figured this out. So I do think this really does, and in the spirit of celebrating this, the Route 66 anniversary, I think these signs really are just really as a result of the development of that corridor back in the day. So don't feel so bad, because I deserve a little bit of that educational and reform, if you will. But with that, any other questions?
Yes,
Trustee
Shanna,
Paul?
following up on Trustee Kiefer's point, and I know it came up in planning and zoning with Commissioner Talia-Petra, the difference between the pole sign and the flutter sign, and how is the flutter sign being treated as we move forward?
Mayor Rael, Trustee Baldwin, so a pole sign is a permanent sign. It has got to be permanently mounted into the ground. The kind of flutter or feather signs, as we know them, those are considered banner signs per the code, which under today's code are illegal unless you come to the planning director and tell me about your traffic and your intention, and then I have the subjective choice to approve it or not. My proposal is to take out that subjective provision, and so they would just be illegal, period. There could be some overlap with what the code calls a temporary sign. Temporary signs have very small square footage limitations that none of these feather signs would be able to comply with. And so if someone wanted to erect a 4 square foot feather sign, that could fall under the temporary sign regulations, but those have kind of time clocks associated with them, and they do still need to be permitted.
Thank you. Helpful.
All right, I will, and since I'm saying about getting educated, I'm going to ask something, and I should have probably picked it up, Shanna, so don't be surprised here. I did get some email, and I think you may have gotten it too, from one particular business who has stated to us that their business has dropped significantly because we've made that change. So I'm just talking about this out loud here so that we can all sort of think about it. I don't like the flutter signs either. I think they're very, if you will, transitory or whatever. They're not a full sort of investment. I do understand why they're there. And the requirement right now under what you're proposing is that they're just gone completely. Is that right?
Mayor Rael, yes, unless they're going to be truly temporary in nature and under 4 square feet.
Okay. And so let me ask you that. Is there a time period there that you would?
Mayor Rael, the code says 30 days, and you can request one 30-day extension.
Okay. All right, so we get 60 days for a flutter sign.
30.
Well,
30 plus
A
30.
potential of 60 for a small flutter sign. Most of the signs that we see in the village would not be able to meet that requirement, and I'm going to meet with this business owner on Thursday to better understand kind of the size and shape of her signage, but I'm not sure that the temporary sign regs would really meet.
yeah, no, I agree with
desire.
that. I just want to make sure that that we at least sort of recognize that piece. I think we're in the right place with what you propose. I just want to make sure that if there is some provision for a flutter sign, we know what that is.
Mr. Mayor, I would also say that it may be that, placement of a sandwich board sign will, become the more sort of smaller, we know a number of businesses are using them, and most are placing them, not in the sidewalk, which is great. But I think that, part of our longer conversation about activating on 4th Street and the good work that's being done by Main Street is how do we do joint marketing, joint branding, having signage that actually really reflects and amplifies each other businesses, so.
Okay. All right, well, now that we've had that whole conversation, we need a motion to approve the publishing of the ordinance. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve publishing and advertising of ordinance number 312, amending the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque zoning code, including section 9.2.3 definitions and 9.2.22 signs to clarify sign regulations, update clear sight triangle standards, reformat sign standards, and make other related changes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved in second. Madam Clerk to call the roll.
Mayor, you get a buy on this one. This one's approving.
Really?
It must be getting late here.
Must be getting late on this one. All right.
I have to give you cue cards.
All those,
I can call the roll, that's not a problem.
well, all right.
You
All
get a
those in
rolling.
favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All disapprove, same sign. Yes, it is getting late, Michelle. Trustee Edwards. All right, now we're down to reports. Item 6, report from Ms. Rodriguez, Chief on the cash report.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Mayor and trustees, before I use the cash report for June 2026, the village's ending cash balance was approximately $15.1 million. During the month, cash decreased by approximately $420,000. However, year-to-date, revenues exceeded expenditures by nearly $800,000. Below is one significant payment to Albuquerque Asphalt related to road improvement projects. This expenditure is grant reimbursable. Also to note, we have $44,000 in accounts payable, which represents fiscal year 2026 expenses that were paid out in fiscal year 2027. I stand for any questions.
Any questions on the financial report? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Rodriguez. Now we'll go to Mr. Avila for department reports.
Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees. With this report, I just want, again, what everybody has appreciated this past weekend is the night at the Farm Family Festival and the contribution of volunteers and staff from across the village. I do want to point that out. Also, on this, you'll notice that at the down Norte Open Space, there has been a lot of work done to complete the Quality of Life grant. That's the one we had a clock ticking on. And that was done, as well as some open space funding that we had. If you haven't been out there, we'd really like for you to take a look at it. You have an irrigation channel that can actually take water from the well and take it out back to the west side. And also that irrigation channel can water 6 acres in about 2 hours. So it moves it very quickly and gets it done when you get some water on there. So that is developing nicely. Excuse me. The point out here on the public safety report, when you get traffic stops over 200 traffic stops, you're really having an impact on what's out there in the village. So that we keep hearing from our folks that public safety that visit our neighborhood watch groups, which again we'll be meeting here on the 30th and then again on August 4th at National Night Out. When you get those kind of traffic stops, you're making an effect on other crimes that might be in the village. So when we get those good numbers, that is a measure of success. With that, I'll stand for any questions to keep it short.
Any questions of Mr. Avila as it relates to department work?
I was having a hard time understanding. What do you mean we have a measure of success when we have 200 stops?
Because that is as far as the rate of traffic stops, it's actually a good number is concerning the overall amount that we get. And what I mean by that is it's a good percentage. It's our number one indicator. And what it does is they're stopping people from speeding, and they're also, when they do that, can then see any other crimes that might be committed or pull people for warrants and that sort of stuff. But 200 is a pretty good number that we've been told by our BCS. So if you get over that, you're doing good.
So does that mean that we have officers that are spending more time in our community actually pulling people over?
They're active on the streets and they're pulling people over.
And when we get a number below 200, then they're not actively on our streets?
That's not necessarily the case. There might be less traffic, that sort of stuff. But we know that when they are doing that, it's a good indicator.
Okay. And does that have a very strong impact on our revenue in terms of these traffic stops?
It doesn't have a direct impact on our revenue because we don't receive those revenues. It is, it's an impact on safety. So as a general element, you have a safer place, you have better business, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Trustee Edwards, yeah, any of the traffic citations that are issued by the county sheriffs, we don't get any revenue from those citations. That goes directly to the county because they're performing the work.
I don't like that.
Well, we should have that conversation because that's the state statute recognizes the arresting agency as the entity that receives the distribution of funds. So they share with the state and with the entity that does the arrest. So or does the citation. So like, for example, all of the City of Albuquerque citations that are issued go to Metro Court, and Metro Court gets the revenues from those, and the city gets a very small portion of those revenues, but most of that is to support the Metro Court operation. And in some cases, the county officers are in the same place because they use the Metro Court system.
So is that by statute then?
That's by statute, that's right. And it's ironic because in others, well, for example, if you're in Corrales or Rio Rancho, they're a different structure. But Bernalillo County, because of the Metro Court system and how it was established by state statute years ago, all of the revenues from citations of that nature are split with the state and the local entity that does the issuing the citation.
So they use traffic calming cameras in their example earlier today for Rio Grande Boulevard. Would we get revenue from that, or would that go to the county?
Those, depending on how we structure our ordinance, the cameras are not do not fall in the same category as citations because they're relatively new, if you will, a public safety system. They're civil penalties, they're not penalties as you would get with a motor vehicle violation. And so the entities that have cameras have a process to collect the fees, and those fees go directly to the entities. Most of them share those revenues with the rental of the units from the company that owns the equipment.
Okay.
So that's something we should have a conversation, as we are gonna propose to you all here in months here, a proposed public safety sort of investment in cameras. We'll have that conversation and give you some more detail on that.
Okay.
Any other questions, trustees?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
And John, I hope, otherwise I see Erin still in the audience, that she might be able to help. The harvest, what do we do with all the food?
Well, John and I have picked up at least 10 pounds apiece. Just kidding. Go ahead, Erin.
Thank you, Mayor Rael, Trustee Kiefer. We utilize, the first goal of the food is to use it in our own programming. So we do offer workshops on food preservation and preparation and cooking. And so that would be the first step, is to try to program as much different educational workshops around what we grow as possible. The next step on the list would be, there are some opportunities for donations. So there are food pantries or nonprofits who do food, like home distribution to those in need. And that would be kind of our second line of, I mean, those are really the two lines of defense. I will note that this is an ongoing conversation around the Ag Centers to say and I think it's something that could be discussed through the master planning effort, is what is the purpose of all of this food that we are actually growing? It does take, it turns out, a pretty significant amount of time to harvest all of the food that we grow. And so then just depending on staff resources and the volume of teenage volunteers that arrive during the summer, that makes a big impact on how much we can grow. So yeah, we do try to make sure that we program as much as possible. And as we're looking into the fall season, then we are hoping to bring in something more like the farm-to-table dinners that have been done in the past. When those are timed correctly with the chefs and with the harvest, then that's a pretty decent relief valve for that produce.
Awesome. I mean, I just saw this stuff and I was like, ooh, that all sounds good.
Yeah.
So didn't know where I stood in line to get some of that. But thank you.
Yep, I think one of the things that we'd like to see, trustees, is really trying to get that food that's not obviously used either for training and or used for some of our programs, to the food banks and other places, so that we can help support their need to feed others not only in our community, but in the region, if you will.
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Or one more
Trustee.
comment, I should say. The repaving on Guadalupe Trail between El Paraiso and Mullen. Who oversees that? Because the people on Mullen from Guadalupe Trail only have the one way in and out. And it was a nightmare navigating those heavy duty trucks, which I get, it's temporary, but their time and their efficiency was very subpar. In how that whole process works. And then it happened at the same time that there was stuff going on at Guadalupe Chavez project at the same time. And so it created a whole mess for the people that were trapped up on Mullen. So just kind of wondering timing of projects and.
Sure. Two things. One, again, thanks to you all and the approval of additional planning position that will help with the planning staff. We have restructured one of our positions so that we're going to have one of the employees that was doing a lot of the, if you will, the code enforcement, is also going to be now expanding his role to do more enforcement of issues just like this. Those projects are obviously handled through Keen Shop, through the Public Works Shop, in terms of getting the contracts and getting the contractors on site to do the work. But where we don't do as good a job, and this was a good example because both you and Trustee Baldwin made comments and sent us some requests, at least from one particular constituent, where we really need to have someone, if you will, watching some of the bigger contractor projects and dealing with some of these coordination and informational issues that sometimes arise because, as you all know, our challenge is that our projects are very small in terms of costs, or if you will, in terms of the size of the projects. So a lot of times what we don't get is we don't get a lot of prep time from these contractors because they view this, oh, this is a 1 day or 2 day job, we'll just come and do it quickly. And oftentimes forget the fact that there are residents in the corridor that need to have access, like the one that Trustee Baldwin raised concerns about. So I guess my point to you is, and to the trustees, is that we're working on having this particular individual now expanding his role from just, if you will, code enforcement to helping monitor contracts. We're having the same issues really with the gas company of New Mexico doing some work along Rio Grande. PNM's is going to do some work on some pole relocations. And then, of course, we have some of the internet companies like Easy Fiber and others that are going to be starting to sort of work in the village. And that's where we want to have him be able to get out there and ensure that the issues that you're raising and others have raised are addressed early in the process as opposed to being too reactionary to them. So, but that is how we're handling it now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say a couple of things and then we'll end our meeting since we went through all these things. First and foremost, are we good with then moving trustee reports to the beginning, and we'll have that structured in the agendas going forward, as long as we have a timeline so that way we don't get too long-winded. And since now it's my turn, you guys all can, no, just kidding. Look, first and foremost, I want to say first and introduce you all to Lee Bruner, who's sitting in the back there. Lee is our new 3/4 time attorney and will be doing a lot of work, and from time to time will be sitting in Bill's seat. But I also want to take this time to thank Bill for his, quite frankly, his support and his work. He's helped us tremendously throughout the years, and I know that he will be phasing out, but he will still be involved in some projects that he probably wish would go away, but they still seem to not be going away, but he has the expertise. So we're in a transition process now with the attorneys, but I just want to say publicly thank you to Bill for all your help and support, and you've been a great help to me in terms of just giving me a historical perspective on being mayor, and some of the historical knowledge you have is invaluable for the village. Also, just want to say that there are some stuff you'll be seeing here going on in the community. I was talking to both Trustee Baldwin earlier. We're improving the median. I finally got the go-ahead from the county to improve the median there at Osuna and 2nd Street. And we're gonna put some nice gravel in there and clean it up and put a welcome sign to the village so that we start, hopefully it'll help us deal with some of the issues that we heard last month with Elwood and Edgewood Park. We've had our folks go out there and patrol the bike paths. I've asked John, and he's implemented with Keene, that now one of our employees will be traveling the bike paths on a bi-monthly. If we have to do it weekly, we'll do it weekly in the summer times to make sure that those areas where we're seeing some, if you will, some folks utilizing either our right-of-way or other right-of-ways, and making sure that the right entity is taking care of that. And so we're cleaning up that area. And look, as you all know, this is not a huge, if you will, community, but there's a lot of entrances into the community from different major thoroughfares. So let us know if you all see some areas where you think maybe we need to have our folks patrol, at least go out and see what's going on, and we'll do as much of those cleanups as we can. But it's all in an effort to make sure that we're not letting these things get too bad, and then before I know, we have a bigger issue on our hands with a lot of the activity that's going on, especially along Paseo. And then, last but not least, I think, as we start moving into going back to school, Trustee Renaud, your perspective in terms of what's happening at APS and that sort of thing, trying to set up a meeting with the superintendent to talk about getting back to school and getting a better, if you will, report on what's happening with the school facilities, since they're both, again, under some renovations, et cetera. And then, as you all saw in your flyer today, on your, we're having the next conversation on Chavez Road will be on the 29th. Where they'll be presenting to the community the designs that are being utilized or in place here for the development of that infrastructure for more community input, et cetera. So with that being said, thank you all for all the good work tonight, and I don't see anything else on the agenda, Madam Clerk. Are we ready to adjourn? We are adjourned. We don't need a motion, do we? We're adjourned.
The time?
At 9:50. Thank you, guys.
Way to make up time.
Yeah, have fun. So when do you guys get back? Right. Yeah. Well, we can just leave it the way it is, and we can just move it up.